Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience in getting started. Could you please call the roll, Bill?
Commissioner Metz?
Here.
Commissioner Tucker?
Here.
Commissioner Gupta? Commissioner Gupta is absent. Vice Chair Phillips?
Here.
Commissioner Croft? Here. Chair Motter?
Present.
Commissioner Scharf? Commissioner Scharf is absent. For the record, 5 present.
Could Commissioner Phillips please read his statement on remote participation?
I have just cause to attend this meeting remotely under the Brown Act. I have attended no meetings remotely this calendar year. I must attend this meeting remotely because I have a need related to a disability which could not be accommodated at this meeting. In this room, I am accompanied by no one over the age of 18.
Thank you, Vice Chair Phillips. I will proceed to the section on agenda changes, additions, and deletions. And I do wish to make a change to the agenda this evening. Item 2, special presentation and discussion on partnering norms between staff and commissioners for maximum effectiveness will not be heard tonight and will be deferred to a future meeting based on the absence of 2 commissioners. I would also, in this process, like to call attention to a new section that we have begun to include in our packets, which are a response of our utilities director to outstanding questions that were raised by the commission in previous meetings. With no further ado, I would like to turn to in-person public comment. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on items not on the agenda today?
We do have 2 requests to speak. Our first speaker is Sven T.
Good afternoon, UAC members, and I just want to say first, thank you for doing what you do. God bless you. God, I'd hate to have to do your jobs and your volunteers. Thank you. 2, thank you for the support around our induction stove rebate program, and more importantly, in moving our emphasis in educating our citizens, not just on climate change, but on the health impacts of natural gas stoves. As the science tells us, having a natural gas stove in your house is essentially the same as having a smoker, secondhand smoke, in your house in related to the concentrations of benzene, formaldehyde, NOx, and other toxic components. But that's not what I'm here about. Big picture, you as a utility advisory committee, to meet our climate change goals, to make our climate inhabitable for our descendants, and that when I talk about that, I'm talking about our kids and our grandkids, and just keeping the climate nice so we can just, please let us go skiing for the love of God. We've got to be an example city and end our natural gas use, particularly in the residential sector, as soon as possible, and I'm talking 2045. So I'd like to refer you to an email of David Cole from May 13th, 2026. Roughly 1/3 of our new homes have natural gas hookups, mainly for stoves. And we need to get those people that are doing that to sign a notarized document that acknowledges the health impacts of that natural gas stove, and they also need to put up a bond to take care of the decommissioning of that gas line, because they know, we all know the gas is going to be turned off. We all know the Air District is putting in rules that's going to ban gas appliances. So it does every citizen, every resident a disservice and puts a cost burden on them when we allow additional gas lines for new homes. And I'm not saying we can't stop them from doing it, but we can make sure they pay their fair share of the decommissioning. Second of all, the Buena Vista mobile home project now has gas lines back in it. And again, these gas lines are only going to be in use 19 years to 2045, maybe to 23 years to 2050. And that's what our gas lines have already been in use for over 70 years here. So we'll only get 1/3 of the cost value of these gas lines out. So they really should be priced 3 times higher because that's their useful life now. And so it makes so much more sense to spend our money on electrification and education than it does for putting these gas lines in. Closing what I said at the beginning. Thank you guys for doing what you're doing. It is most appreciated. Thank you. And it is thankless, although I'm saying thank you right now.
Thanks for your comment. I'm sure it'll come into play when we talk about gas and transition later in the meeting.
We're just going to wait for the...
Our next speaker is Avro S.
Good evening, Utility Advisory Commissioners. My name is Avro Shah, and I'm a student at Palo Alto High School. Oops. I think following the Ninth Circuit ruling in the Restaurant Association versus the City of Berkeley, we all are aware of the steps the city has taken in scaling back our reach codes and finding a new way to try to regulate natural gas in the residential sector. I think we have been impressed with our ability to circumvent that ruling in the sense that we see a majority of new homes being all electric. But within the percentage of homes that isn't, which is, from my understanding, between 25% and 33%, the majority of those homes, or a significant proportion of those homes that have a gas line have one simply just for natural gas stoves. So I think we've been very pleased to see that following the March 2nd study session on the SCAP, we've made a lot of progress, and we have now health communication embedded into the SCAP to help address that specific factor. But there are more steps that the UAC can take to recommend to the utilities to take action to address the other parts of this big story that have not been focused on so as much. So we've, I think, done a lot on health in the recent months, embedding that in the SCAP and getting the communications team to devise a plan to re-envision the SCAP's marketing. But I would like to urge you all to consider the issues that we haven't focused on so much regarding natural gas in terms of how can we move towards, in line with our climate goals, decommissioning gas lines and hoping to abandon them in the future. I think Mr. Thiessen has outlined several potential areas where we can go into that. And I would like to urge you all to consider that while Palo Alto might be a small city in a vast world, we do play a part in holding ourselves accountable for the emissions that our city is responsible for. And I know that you all as commissioners on this advisory board have an opportunity and a possibility to take action to help play a part in that. We can do things at the city level that can ripple out, and they can also start here. And I think that the solutions that we can take to help step away from natural gas in the residential sector and the commercial sector and move away from gas lines through decommissionment and helping make that easier are the steps that need to be taken. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any public comments online?
Just as a reminder, we'll take virtual general public comment at the end of the meeting.
Oh, great. Thank you. I had forgotten that change. All right. We'll proceed to approval of the minutes. And does anyone have any comments or discussion points on the minutes, or could I get a motion to pass them?
I have one comment. This was on my discussion of the Stanford Sustainable Data Center meeting. I wanted to have the minutes include my comment, which was many rainbows and unicorns. I think it's important that the minutes communicate that I found the meeting unrealistically positive about data center impacts.
Could we modify the minutes accordingly?
Could Commissioner Metz state what you would like to change or add? I'm sorry.
Yeah, quote, "many rainbows and unicorns," unquote.
I think we'd just like to maybe add another sentence that says that, I'll let you put it in your own words, but
I can, if I can add then, I found the meeting unrealistically positive about data center impacts with inadequate examination of the challenges.
are there any other requested changes?
I don't request a change, and I'm not going to pose this question here, Alan, but I'd like to understand, maybe at the next meeting, we've asked this before, how do the minutes get written? I can't help but note and emphasize and opine and worry. Those are all verbs that are attributed to me and many more. How does, is this a manual process, I guess, is the question I'd like to come back to at some appropriate time on how we do minutes, whether these are the best way and the most efficient way to do minutes. I'll leave it at that and take a comment, maybe even another month if you want.
I can answer your question, Commissioner Tucker. The City Clerk's office currently uses a transcriptionist, an outside transcriptionist, but we're currently looking into using AI. And so we've been taking all of the transcripts from our past meetings and using different AI options to see what is the best option.
Thank you.
I move to accept the minutes.
Do I have a second?
This is to accept the minutes as amended? Yes.
As amended.
Second.
Could you please call the vote?
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Vice Chair Phillips,
Yes.
Chair Mater,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Commissioner Metz.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, we will now turn to the Utilities Director report.
Great, thank you, Commission. So I wanted to give an update on some of the recent council approvals. So there was a contract amendment with Veritex One Software. It's for our WaterSmart Utilities customer portal. It's the main way that we communicate to our customers in our billing system. We had a professional services agreement contract with Concourse Tech and Prospect Silicon Valley, which provide technical assistance and project analysis to help non-residential customers evaluate and implement building electrification projects. And then we had a purchase order with Jensen Precast Old Castle Infrastructure, and those are our electric utility underground boxes. And then we went to City Council to updates to our utilities rules and regs, I believe, is that, well, hold on 1 second, please. Just confirming, utilities rules and regs also went to the council for approval. Wanted to provide an update to our Foothills Utilities Underground project. As you know, we are undergrounding about 9 miles of overhead lines, more or less on the other side of 280. We roughly have 1,200 feet left of this to do, which is about 2% of the project. We're very pleased with that. The remaining conduit is expected to be completed in the end of June. Most of the work is in the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District. So the next steps for that will be undergrounding some of the secondary services to the customers. So we expect to de-energize that line in November. So this will be, hopefully the last year that we have this overhead line during the quote-unquote fire season. So I'm very excited to finish that project and to provide this update. So it's kudos to our engineering team and working with a contractor to get that done. We were also recognized as part of that project in what we call the Teen D World magazine, which was talking about our Foothills Underground project. So Palo Alto was highlighted as one of those cities really on the forefront of dealing with areas in the high fire district. Talking about induction cooktops, there's going to be a demo at the chili cook-off. So utilities for the first time this year will be hosting a booth. At the Chili's cook-off, we have a tagline, but you'll have to be there to hear it on July 4th. So we're going to promote the rebate program for induction cooktops, which includes $500 for installing a permanent induction cooktop or range, and there's $50 for portable induction cooktops. These are the highest in class that we've seen from our neighboring agencies, so really pleased to roll that out. And then for income qualified customers, that actually raises up to $1,000. And then $100, which is almost the full cost of that portable induction cooktops. In addition, the Palo Alto Library, working with the library, they're offering checkouts for portable induction cooktop as their loaner program. Utilities is actually purchasing additional units, so we're purchasing another dozen for them to use, to loan out, so we're very pleased with that. So we'd love to see the community out there on the chili cook-off on July 4th from 11 to 3 p.m. We'll be doing some demos on that program, so be happy to talk about that once we have that event. And then another event for the community is the annual Municipal Service Center Open House. It's kind of the save the date. It's a look at the services provided to the community at our Municipal Service Center. It's on the website. It's July 25th. We highlight several of the services we provide, and then the community can take a look at how we repair water leaks. There's the aerial bucket. I wouldn't say ride, but you can go on that. It's very popular. We had it out that last year. But there's food trucks, displays, and you'll hear a lot about our city services and programs. And that completes my report.
Thank you. We'll now turn to new business. A reminder that we will not be hearing item number 2 on the agenda, which is the special presentation and discussion on partnering norms between staff and commissioners for maximum effectiveness. We expect to postpone this to the next meeting in hopes that more commissioners are able to attend. Which brings us to our single agendized item today, which is the review and recommendation of the Utilities Advisory Commission FY 2026 through FY 2027 work plan for City Council approval. We have talked through a process for this that Alan is going to provide a couple of introductory remarks around, and then I'm going to help lead us through a process where we each have a couple of minutes to talk about the high priority items that we sent in, relate them back to the draft objectives, noting places where they simply don't overlap, and then we will go through the process of prioritizing between these 13 plus added items. So with that, Ellen, I'll let you kick it off, and then I'll take over again.
Great. So just for the record, Alan Curatore, Director of Utilities. I'm joined by Terry Crowley, our Chief Operating Officer, and Assistant City Manager, Kylie Noze. The process we went to develop this work plan objectives, the drafts, was actually receiving input from all the UAC commissioners. We put that in as of May 28th. We tried to put that in the draft objectives. We have updated our process to mirror City Council and actually coming through the objectives. We came up with the top 13. As part of your deliberation process, you will see that Bell will bring up those objectives so we can work and modify those in real time. You can change those priorities and make adjustments. The other point that I would like to kind of to mention for the public is we provided the whole list of those submittals from the commissioners in attachment B. We also put the purpose and duties of the UAC more for the public's information on what type of items go to the commission. If staff could also add, there's obviously a lot of interest by the commissioners to do high priority work. As you go through your deliberation process, we would appreciate if maybe the top 5 or top 6 priorities that you absolutely want to see as those priority deliverables. If those could be highlighted for staff, we would absolutely appreciate that. We understand these are your priority objectives, and also recognize that some of these items may span longer. This is a multi-year commission, and but wanted to make sure these priority objectives were accomplished. So we're here to help, as staff, to help facilitate those discussions, and able to answer any questions as you go through your process.
Great. Thank you. I really appreciated everybody's participation in sending in work plan items that were important to them. I thought that it might be useful, it's not possible to discuss process offline with a full group. And so I did just want to make sure that the process that we've laid out makes sense for tonight's meeting. In particular, I want to give everybody a couple of minutes, not 15 each, but a couple of minutes. I may rely on this clock here to, if they would like, elaborate a little bit on items that they submitted and why they were particularly excited or motivated to work on those items. Staff has done a very nice job of trying to include each of those items in the draft objectives, although I will say, just for me personally, I think that there's definitely an opportunity to reword some of these to ensure that they fully capture the intent of the items I submitted. So I want to provide people the opportunity to do that. And then I think that we should go through a process of prioritization that could take a couple of different forms. We could take a majority kind of rules approach here and simply put forward a set of numbers that we each prefer, and then compare them and kind of use that to elevate what matters for our commission. Or we could pursue some alternative path that I'm open to discussing. Vice Chair Phillips, do you have any thoughts on process before we get started?
Yeah, I think maybe it's more a question of what difference does it make in the prioritization? I think it's going to be very difficult to get this body to agree on priorities. Maybe I'm wrong. But I would love to hear, what does it mean for something to be prioritized first versus 13th? Does 13th mean, assuming we end up with 13, that one might just get left off if staff gets too busy, or what is the meaning of the prioritization process?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, and I appreciate your asking it. We have a 12-month rolling calendar, and so realistically, if we get to one significant item each month, we could feasibly get through 12, actually more like 11 items. But as we all know from experience, in practice, it's not possible in many cases to get through one item in each meeting. And so, especially when it comes to rates, we review preliminary rates, we come back and have final approval of rates, and so that's typically several meetings that we would touch on that agenda item. We cannot really touch on every agenda item here, realistically, if we're going to stay sane and leave before midnight. So I don't think 13 means that we don't ever get to it, but it might mean that it's a very light touch item, or it gets folded into another item, rather than having a dedicated space on our work plan. Is that fair?
Thank you. And my other question is the list we got, is that staff's recommended prioritization, or is that elicits in no particular order?
They're listed in no particular order. That's a very good point. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts on process?
Just a quick question. I see it printed out here, but did I miss, was it sent in advance, the list of all of our 5 priorities? It was sent in advance in email?
Yes.
I missed it, my bad.
Okay, so we were provided the attachments here, and I'd like to give everybody an opportunity, if they so desire, to quickly review the priorities that they sent in for their work plan. I'd like to take this in the order presented in the packet, which is alphabetically. Commissioner Croft, are you open and amenable to starting? Sure. Wonderful. And if you don't mind, let's keep these to 5 minutes each for anything that you've submitted. You don't have to take the whole time, I will not, but just to keep things moving tonight.
Great. Okay. So I submitted 3 items. My first item was regarding time of use rates. I would like us to review the time of use rates pilot and see us roll out and promote time of use within the city within the year, basically. And to extend it to NEM customers, I did see the update that was sent in the packet. So that's the type of thing I want to see. I want to see updates on where we are, what's the plan, and kind of push us to roll it out further. And I did suggest my KPIs here. I saw a public comment that was like, why do we even care about time of use rates? I think we just have to be knowledgeable about where our energy comes from. Our city has a goal of SCAP, of reducing carbon footprint of our power. We are going to have more and more people driving electric vehicles and coming home, and they could plug in right in the peak hours, so we could have electrification actually cause all of our energy prices go up. So it just, to me, this is a priority to roll them out and hopefully have as many people as possible take advantage of them, and hopefully we can help them reduce their costs of electricity. My second item was, this could even be my first item, but regarding electric affordability. So we have kind of delved into this in our financial subcommittee, but I think it's extremely important for us to maintain our competitive pricing relative to our neighboring cities and to keep it as inexpensive as possible to encourage electrification. So we're planning on this beautiful future where we're moving over to electricity. We want people to use electric cars, and I think it's imperative on us to keep our prices down. They already are down, but to keep them down. So I'd like to see that be a priority in our discussions, how we are going to do that. Let's see. The last thing was about communication, and this has kind of been, a side topic for many discussions, is just, does the community know what our priorities are? Do they know what we are doing? Is the uptake what we want it to be? And do we even have contact information, digital contact information for every customer? So I'd love to see us adopt a communication plan that involves, having a direct line to every single customer, some digital way to get in touch with them if there is a leak or anything that we need to contact them about, and to do some kind of annual reporting out to them on the goals of the city. I know it's more often than that through the bills, but I don't get a bill anymore. So having some kind of universal way that we can communicate with our customers, ideally it's digital, and for those who refuse to give us a digital means, we could make it mail. So those are my 3 topics.
Thank you. Commissioner Gupta is not present. I have reviewed his submissions, and I hope that each of you have also had a chance to. I'm going to read them briefly. The first is rate affordability and transparency. The second is interactions with SFPUC and BOSCA, specifically around independent analysis of the SFPUC water projections. The third is energy transition coherence, largely around unifying plans for gas and electric utilities. The fourth is wastewater and the capital improvement plan and associated increases in projected rates associated with that capital improvement plan. And the final is fiber to the premises. I think we all know of Commissioner Gupta's interest in fiber to the premises, so I was personally surprised to see that as number 5, but glad to see that it was included. I will now proceed to talk about my 2 recommended items. The first is to review the performance of the recycled water utility and advise on any modifications to city strategy around recycled water. As a commission, we have not touched on recycled water in my tenure on the commission, and I believe that it's both an important part of our water supply portfolio, but also critical to affordably maintaining our wastewater utility in the years ahead. I would like to see that specifically addressed in a more substantive way through not just our rates, or any discussion of rates, but to have some separate and focused analysis on the recycled water utility, which is currently in the process of some significant transition and upgrade. The second item is to review the capital improvement plans and operating expenses for the wastewater utility more broadly in support of preparing for future rate increases and identifying potential cost-saving measures. As Commissioner Gupta noted in his submission, the wastewater utility accounts for some of the fastest increases, although it's not to say that those are the largest increases. So we should differentiate between those 2 things. But the wastewater utility will need to raise rates and continue to raise rates. I believe that our support as a commission could help to strengthen the capital improvement planning efforts for that utility and help us anticipate exactly when and to what degree those rate increases are in fact necessary. So I look forward to finding ways to incorporate those 2 items into a stronger part of our rate discussion, as well as our capital improvement plan discussions. Commissioner Metz.
Thank you, Chair. My priorities, number 1 was gas utility long-term business strategy, and I think this needs to be something like 10 to 20 years that addresses technical aspects, capital, economics, legal. I think there's some big legal problems, so I think this is a pretty, I can see reasons, technical, legal, and economic reasons why this is going to be quite hard to do. I really don't know how you deal with stranded assets in this instance, but I think it's extremely important. This is one area that several commissioners raised. I think this is one of the most popular topics with a little bit different flavors, but several people raised similar issue. Number 2 is electric utility business strategy and strategic planning process. Again, topic raised by several commissioners. I think since we're dealing with an environment that's highly uncertain, it's as evidenced by the big envelope of future demand in the CPAU forecast. I think it's important that we have a planning process that's suited for that kind of business strategy. And I think it needs to include, again, like the gas strategy, all aspects from business, financial, economic, and technical. I did like Commissioner Gupta's idea of a unified transformation strategy that incorporates both gas and electric, since presumably we're talking about eliminating gas, replacing it in pretty much all functions with electricity. So I think doing those together is a good idea. So I would definitely endorse that. But I think it's really important that these be complete business strategies. For example, the first item, the gas strategy, is related to number 1 on the draft CPAU list, and the electric business strategy is related to number 7 on the CPAU list, but as I read those proposals, they're much narrower, dealing with capital and stuff like that, which of course is important, but capital is, 1/4 of business strategy. So I think it's really important that these be comprehensive. Third area, improve UAC operational effectiveness. We talked about this at the last meeting. I think it's important, as Commissioner Tucker emphasized a little while ago, to improve how UAC operates so we can do a better job advising City Council. And particularly, I think one of the biggest areas is timing. Addressing some of these gargantuan issues like water planning and so on, and what we just talked about, electric and gas, requires much more time than reading, a presentation a few days before a meeting and trying to come up with a recommendation. I think that's, if we're not rubber stamps of staff proposals, we just need a lot more time to consider and analyze to come up with good recommendations. Fourth area I want to recommend is emergency preparedness. This actually was teed up last year, and we agreed to do it as part of reliability, resilience, and adaptation standing topic. So what I'm asking for now is simply that we do what we committed to doing last year. And the 4 bullets are down there. Increase FTTP cash flow. Again, this is another topic that several commissioners raised as priorities, each with a little bit different flavor. My personal thought is that there might be ways to accelerate cash flow, which would make this look a lot better. Whatever approach we take, it's obviously an important topic to at least 4 or 5 commissioners. So it's related to item 6 in the staff draft, but I think the staff draft is far too narrow in what it addresses. I think it's fair to say most of the commissioner comments relate to strategy and broader issues than simply did the pilot do technically what we said it would do. So, and I would also add one other area which was not in my submission, which is reliability. Since we're emphasizing electrification, I think it's important that we set specific goals for reliability. I know we've talked about, doing well in this space, but I think we need to really set quantitative metrics to be able to demonstrate to residents that we really are reliable and that we are paying attention to it, and to be able to show them and communicate that, because we're asking them to make a bet on only electricity. And I think for a lot of people, that's going to be a stretch. So we need to do our part to demonstrate that it makes sense. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Phillips?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to compliment the staff. I like the list a lot that you came up with. One thing I do like about it is the way it is drafted. It starts in most cases with a verb, so we can check at the end of the year, did we actually do this thing? So I'm very much in favor of that as a list of objectives. So can we come back at the end of the year and say, did we do that, rather than have things like talk about or think about or discuss? I guess my priorities can be stated pretty shortly, pretty succinctly, I think, and hopefully map in to some extent with what's there. I do think we should achieve a clear go, no-go recommendation on fiber to the premises. Following up on Commissioner Metz, this is more than just a technical thing of, yeah, it worked and we got some people hooked up and they like it, to what is the business plan? What do we really see going forward? So we don't just keep going through the end of the year, we're going to do more pilot, see if it works. I'd love for us to have that recommendation, which goes to the UAC, presumably the Finance Committee and the council. Maybe a surprise to no one. Number 2 on my list is review the reserve management policies and potentially change as needed. This has turned out to be one of the most effective levers we've had for influencing rates and keeping rate raises down. And yet, we have not, and particularly now that Baker Tilly has released a report, there's a lot of uncertainty about what they're saying. I do think we need to do this. We mentioned the last meeting, and I thought we agreed that this would be in the July meeting because in the minutes, that's what it says, but I don't see it on the scheduled for the July meeting. So that's a change. I'm a little unhappy with that, but I do think that's something we need to discuss. And again, I'll come across at the future agenda. The data center strategy, I believe we need. The long-term strategy for natural gas, consistent with the SCAP, I think everybody is saying that's a pretty high priority, given that we have 85% of households that have at least one gas appliance, and that doesn't seem to be shifting very quickly. It may not be as high priority as some of the other items, but I do believe it's something that we need to do. And again, my other two items were have a clear strategy for addressing the potential demand from data centers and clearly communicate our concerns regarding the SFPUC water policies, the BOSCA and the SFPUC as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Tucker?
Thanks. First, I want to be clear on the question I was answering because I was answering the 5 priorities that with a clean piece of paper. In other words, I wasn't trying to add items. Yeah?
I'm so sorry. Do you mind restarting the clock? I just don't want him to run out of time.
Yes.
That's okay. I was answering the question, what are the 5 most important priorities to me, as if I had a clean piece of paper. I wasn't looking at last year's list or the list from staff and saying, what's missing? And so I did that. I also looked back at last year's work plan, and it won't surprise you, have to be pretty critical of that document. Critical in the sense, for example, that it lists our accomplishments. We didn't have much to do with most of those accomplishments. There are, 15, 20 accomplishments like, rolling out AMI and replacing the gas mains, the sewer system and so forth. These were the accomplishments of CPAU. They weren't the accomplishments of UAC. When you actually look at what our work plan priorities were, there are a lot of things that we're talking about again this year because we, as Bob said, in a couple of instances, didn't do them. One was, for example, a gas transition plan for 5 to 20 years. We've talked about that, but I don't think we have a very ready gas transition or abandonment plan. So my 5 items, first and foremost, is grid mod, and I sent a 2 or 3 page public memo on that topic with just a bunch of 10 questions I would like us over time, not now, to dig into. Grid mod for me is far and away the most important priority for CPAU and therefore for UAC and the council because it's so big. It's now, according to the current budget, between $375 and $450 million as a multi-year project. That makes it the biggest thing the city is doing, along with the regional water treatment plant. It's taking us onto the bond market this fiscal year. It's going to affect rates this year, next year, and for time foreseeable. So in tying into affordability, which has been a theme from several commissioners, grid mod needs to be seen that way. I don't want this document or this priority to suggest I'm not a big advocate for grid mod. We need grid mod. I just think it's very poorly understood. And the sales case for grid mod to the community for something so large, almost $500 million, isn't clear and compelling. I won't go into the whole document now, but there are things like a substation level, localized, even feeder level heat map of where's the trouble, where are the upgrades. I'm sure you know this, you guys are great, but it's not clear to I think it's not clear to us, the UAC, and it's not clear to the community. That's just one example. Grid mod was planned years ago. I'm sure you update it all the time, but so much has changed in the 3, 4, 5 years since we first floated grid mod. Back then, it was a $200 million project. Now it's more than twice that, likely. But nevertheless, the most important thing I highlight that has changed is the cost of battery storage. There will be battery storage everywhere in the grid across America, including in our substations, sooner or later, and I wish we'd get there sooner. I don't think grid mod is as visionary and big and bold and exemplary as Palo Alto could do it. I don't think it's a grid mod for the future. It may be a grid mod to keep up with the present, like 2030, but not 2050. And I'd like us in many ways to put a lot of attention on grid mod. We can get into how and why and so forth later. And of course, this ties in with every commissioner has said something. Well, most of us have said something about electric. This just ties into electric. So I'll be brief on the next things. Water, you've heard it from others. I think there were 2 or 3 others who said our basic stance towards SFPUC and BOSCA needs to be more active. I've heard over the months that that's political. Well, of course it's political. And we UAC and UCPAU and the council needs a strategy to fix this problem, that we don't have a good faith partnership with SFPUC and we don't have BOSCA representing us and the 20-something others appropriately. And there are many ways that we can try to change that. We don't have a ton of leverage, but we do have some, and we got to do something. So that's item number 2. I've called it gas abandonment plan or transition plan, but it's time that I use the word accelerate. We need to accelerate this so it becomes clear and more specific. How do we identify which neighborhoods win and based on what triggers, where we go into a neighborhood and said, for better or worse, you're first, and in X years, we're going to have to abandon gas. So it's time that we get a little bit more blunt on gas abandonment plan. On fiber, which is my 4th item, you've heard it from others, so I won't repeat it, except to say it's very hard to talk about fiber if we're not going to find a way to be candid, because you're basically doing strategic consumer marketing planning on YouTube for the public. And I know how hard that must be, but we've got to find ways around that, or else I don't think we can do it. My 5th and final hovers over everything, and that's process, or what Commissioner Phillips called, what Phil Metz called operational effectiveness. Same thing, probably different words, and you've heard me say these things too many times, so I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add just one thing?
Please.
Here. Just on your process issue where you started this.
Yeah.
First of all, as was already been said tonight, a lot of these projects are multi-year projects. But as Commissioner Metz has said many times already, including tonight, I think, a lot of these things are so huge that they're sort of the creation or elimination of whole business models. So these are not trivial little things. Again, stating the obvious, but in that sense, I want to take off some of the pressure of having to solve all these business models in the next year or 2. But the other thing that I'm sure will make me completely unpopular in this room is just to point out that you're not limited to 12 meetings a year. So, and particularly as you have, I think, effectively started to implement what we would call ad hoc committees, those are really effective in having 2 people, 3 people really work it and get the multiple. The downside is that not all 7 people are involved in all the details, even at the decision point, but that's okay because you come up with the summary and the judgment and so on. And I've just found on commissions and council, it just works terrifically well. So that either one of those, more regular meetings or more ad hoc meetings sort of expands your capabilities. But I salute you at this point already for just putting these big deal items on there that we would love to have more visibility on sooner, and I know staff agrees with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Lowing. I agree that I would like to see significant expansion of our use of ad hoc committees. I think it's going to be really important as we proceed through this work plan over the next year, and also important in streamlining how we approach staff and how we reach if not consensus, then at least action items that come before council.
And some of the ad hocs, just say one more thing, can almost act as a liaison to work that's already going on staff. It's not, let's start spending more time that we wouldn't already on stuff. It's already going on, and maybe one person sits in on some meetings over there just for a little bit more detail or whatever. I mean, there's just a lot of ways to do this without exploding all the work that staff would have to do to address these things.
Absolutely.
Chair, if I might just add
Please.
something as another consideration, appreciate where, Kylie Nose, Assistant City Manager, appreciate where everyone's dialogue is and very much appreciate where Councilmember Lowing has added the additional tools that we have. I will also just say, yes, we can have more meetings. There is also staff bandwidth that is at play here. And so more meetings, more priorities, and the question becomes what doesn't get done or what additional resources are necessary to accomplish this. So I think you'll hear from staff as we move through this, both a focus on what can be accomplished in 12 months, which is the time period that's before you, what resources are available to do so, or frankly, some hesitation, frankly, or pushback on what can be accomplished in that period of time.
Thank you. Okay, so with that background and opportunity to share a little bit more of the details, I'd like to turn to the process of first editing any of the draft objectives that staff presented. And as much as I hate real-time editing, this is our only way to do it as a committee. So we're going to do real-time edits. And I think we will just take them in order. If everyone wants to take just a minute or two, if they want to review consistency between the priorities, staff assembled and tried to represent your priorities in these draft objectives, but they may not have captured the intent behind some of your words. So if there's any edits that we want to make, we'll do that first, and then we will talk about prioritization.
I have a suggestion.
Please.
There's several items on here that I think could be combined into one item regarding the electric utility. So I have a suggestion. I'm just going to make it. Okay, so my suggestion is to have one item, which is electric utility. I've written this up, so just if you want to listen, that's fine. Electric utility, review and advise on major priorities, including prioritize affordability with goal to retain percentage discounts to PG&E, my pet project. Define goals for grid modernization project, timing, metrics, residential amperage policies and pricing, new technology assessment and integration. Expand TOU offering to all residential customers, report on uptake, analyze load shift, customer savings, conduct additional COSA if required, and new data center policy and price tiers. And I had stopped writing at that point, but I think you've got one in here for large load customers that we could insert that language if required. So that would be to create one work plan item on the electric utility that incorporates those items, which I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Could I encourage us to differentiate between what we need staff to do on the electric utility side versus what we as a UAC will do? I think that the draft objectives that staff kindly synthesized are a lot of reviewing and advising, reviewing and recommending. We could, for instance, review a new COSA for the electric utility. We cannot perform a new COSA, right? So I just want to make sure that, as Commissioner Vice Chair Phillips, articulated, the verb here is really important to nailing this work plan, and I don't object to documenting the kind of set of cohesive energy or electric utility goals that we'd like to review or advise on. But I think we just need to be fairly clean about what we say we are going to do personally or as a commission. Does that make sense?
So taking the example of what I gave,
Yep,
there are 4 topics in there related to the electric utility. One is affordability, one's grid mod, one's TOU, and one is data centers / large load. So there are different items on here.
Yep.
And is that how you would like them to stay?
If staff could opine,
Please,
we
please.
actually like having them discrete deliverables because we have different teams working on them. And then when we're clear on bringing them back, we can say this was complete. And if something has to move, it's part of it being moved versus where we can have that. It also provides an opportunity to, Councilmember Lowing's point is you may want to look at maybe a smaller ad hoc, looking at part of this and under discrete activity, and you want to make this, hey, let's talk about this now because we want it before the end of the year in the case of TOU rates. So, there is sometimes a benefit to consolidate it. There's overarching themes of affordability, which we're hearing, and that might be across the board, and like a baseline objective that you want to see is part of our bringing back items to you. But keeping those discrete, I think, would be helpful. So when you think about the potential for ad hocs, think about how that might be just one item.
yeah. I think the other thing, just for us to all keep in mind, is that these are really helpful documents in informing how staff approach these specific objectives, but they don't necessarily, there's not room in the work plan from council to represent all of that detail.
Right.
So it's, we're not going to ignore that, but I think it helps us to shape what then comes into the presentations.
Yeah, and just to underscore something that I meant when I said the last thing, is not that there have to be a lot of staff ads. A lot of this stuff is already going on, and it's happening in various departments within the city and in the climate action, climate council meeting and so on. So it's not like this is all brand new stuff. And that's why I suggested a touch point, maybe in some cases, having it be a liaison to ongoing work, where there's increased communication to that one person liaison as opposed to long report outs here, because that's already happening. You don't want to duplicate that work, and you don't want them to duplicate the work. So.
May I ask?
Please.
Are we looking to make a work plan document that's much different than what we did last year? I leveled some critique on last year's one, but I mean, like last year has one big chunk, it's number 3 for electric. And it includes grid mod, everything's kind of thrown in there. Like I said earlier, I mean, the work plan hasn't really been a very effective tool for, I don't know if it's effective for staff, but it hasn't meant too much to UAC, I would claim. And to Rachel's point, whether we combine all the electric related items like she does or not is, I'm fine with it, but let me ask the question again. Are we just going to try to update what we did last year, or are we going to do something significantly different?
Yes, so as I probably didn't do a very good job of articulating, we took the comments from all the commissioners and consolidated on a list of 13 items that I think are hopefully on the screen in front of you. And the intent was to take those discrete action items as part of your objectives, and then, if possible, kind of prioritize those. And I think we're trying to, potentially work off this list. This is your list, it's your objectives. And this is really, as we mentioned before, kind of mapping in a similar process that City Council goes through. So they're really kind of distinct objectives that you would want us to have in your work plan to be completed this year.
And maybe more specifically, as we're building a 12-month calendar, these are discrete items that we can agendize. Whereas in the past, I think we've had a work plan that's not necessarily facilitated discrete action and simple agendizing, okay? Commissioner Phillips? I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Vice Chair Phillips.
Yeah, please get that right. I guess part of my question is, this is supposed to be the UAC's annual work plan, but an immense amount of this, in fact, the vast majority of it is work that staff does. So the number 12, the annual report, I mean, we read the annual report. I think we approve it or don't approve it or, make some edits to it. But, and, number 9, procure new power
Yeah.
purchase agreements. We're not going to do that. Staff's going
Yes.
to do that. So I'm a little confused. If I were to say what's ours, it's not our job and not something we're going to do is to procure new power purchase agreements, although it's, I think extremely important, of course, that staff does that as needed. How do we think about that? I mean,
Thank you for that question. I had noted the same verb there and was concerned by it. It is not our function as a UAC to procure anything, but we can recommend that the city procure new resources, right? So we can modify that. This is kind of where we're at right now, is if we could go one by one to edit each of these line items so that we have clarity on what exactly the staff would bring before us. We can have discussion documented in the minutes of what that includes. I think we've already had some as reflected in these submitted work plan items, and our verbal discussion just now, but if there's specific points we want to make sure are included in these lines, we can do that. Then we need to prioritize them, okay?
Where is grid mod in here?
Yeah, exactly. It's not. The word isn't even there, let alone,
So this is a fair question. This is why staff is here. So if there are places where you are trying to map from the recommendations you made to these draft objectives, please ask away. I am personally going to recommend that we edit a couple of these to better include the 2 priorities I added, which were not in, I don't think, fully represented, right? But we can do that in editing.
May I please amplify Rachel's question? The biggest CapEx program in CPAU and the city is not mentioned, so I don't know how we're going to edit and tweak a document that is, from my point of view, structurally wrong from the get-go.
Perhaps we could, if you would like an honest answer to that, we can also add a line, right? Just add a line, it's okay. But we can also start by editing the lines that exist, right?
I also suggest, again, with all due respect, commissioners, a couple things. Staff took their stab at analyzing and pulling together everybody's 7 different opinions. They also are trying to do this in the context of the existing work that needs to be done. So I can appreciate that you may not see your exact words in here, and perhaps asking and seeking clarification may be a point to start versus simply throwing all of it out, assuming mal or ill intent in terms of something being excluded. As an example, there is a 5-year CIP program for the pace and replacement of infrastructure, financing mechanisms. That's an item that you could simply add specifically with a focus on grid modernization. And that might be a very simple 5-word edit that can get at the intention versus wiping the entire process.
But you'll forgive me if I look at this document and say, when one of those 7, actually, apparently there were 5 that you got, but when one of those top 5 priority lists, mine, says grid mod's by far the most important thing, and it doesn't seem to really appear except maybe through a back door on item number 5, I'm perplexed. I don't really know how to start with this document. We seem to have totally disparate views on what this document even is. So I don't know, you edit something that, I don't know, you edit when you don't even agree what the document's supposed to be.
Okay, we are going to proceed through edits. If we want to make additions at the end, that's fine. I would encourage you to try to do your best to see where there are points of connectivity And if you are envisioning a separate agendized item, we can come to that at the end. Okay? Does that work for everybody? Great. If you wouldn't mind making these bigger, because I think that I'm doing fine, but I don't want to bank on everyone else doing fine. I think three or one, even one at a time would be great. Okay, so item number 1, or line 1, again, these are in no order. We do need to get through all 3 of them, so I would like, or all 13 of them. So I'd like to be somewhat efficient about this process. If you could kindly set a 5-minute limit on these. I don't think each of them need to take 5 minutes, but just to help us make sure we get through them, okay? If we need to come back to one at the end, we can come back, okay? Line 1 is gas transition related. Take a minute to read it. Okay. First, are there any concerns with how the commissioner's priorities, particularly focused on the coordinated analysis of a gas transition with an electric growth scenario is captured in this particular line item?
Could I make a suggestion?
Please.
I think the goal should be to adopt a gas transition study. You know, again, this is on us, and I think if we, obviously we're reliant on staff to do what they're saying they're going to do, which is complete the gas transition study. But I think we should be able to look at the end of the year and say, one of the things we did is we have a gas transition study. It's been approved by the UAC and, you know, moved forward, and everybody can look at it and ask if this is the issue. I'm personally less concerned about this, or not very concerned about the coordination of electric planning and gas planning. I think the gas planning is going to be over such a tremendously long time frame, to be honest, in that we have 85% or more of our households that have at least one gas utility. They're not changing out very quickly. We don't have a plan to get them to change out very much more quickly that I know of. And we don't have any way to force people out. So we will need to keep and maintain the current gas infrastructure, whether we like it or not, for a fairly substantial period of time.
Great. I think that that's a very helpful addition, that the UAC would adopt a staff-proposed gas transition study. I want to check in with staff about whether it's realistic to have completed a gas transition study. We've had past conversations about that, but what is it that staff expects to do over the next year relative to gas transition?
So we would probably, instead of adopt, is that the UAC would review.
Review.
The transit, you don't necessarily have to adopt it. And then that allows you to look at the baseline assumption maps and then potentially create or recommend policy implementation is something of a change or an add. That's what I kind of heard through that. So we can wordsmith this a little bit more.
We've had two, if my memory serves me, we've had two separate discussions this year on the gas transition. What are the follow-up items that you are still working on before a formal adoption of said study?
Yeah, so the key one is actually modeling the system. So it was the initial work and update that was provided from Sustainability and Climate Action was really looking at what it looks like on a calculation basis, but it wasn't looking at the actual system. So staff is, with our updated models, can do that analysis now. But that is a heavier lift than just an an evaluation of, what this potentially could look like on a generic level.
And in terms of timing on that, is that realistic to accomplish in the next year or not?
The intent is that we could get a base model, so do some corrections to the existing model, fix some errors, fix some service connections that need to be done, get that base model studied so we can actually look at that load flow and then start to look at areas that if we decommission this section of gas, what does that do to load flow and what sections of mainline does that prevent from replacement, right? But that base model needs to be built, and the thought process, considering all the other work, is that staff could probably finish that base model within the next 12 months. We couldn't finish, I don't think that we could realistically finish a 10 to 20-year comprehensive plan for a gas transition. I think we can get to a start. I think as Director Corritori suggests, we could get to a point of some guiding principles on what that 10 to 20-year plan might look like. But we need to really finish that base model and identify areas that have high potential for decommissioning and what that looks like as far as the cost model. But it all starts with this base model, making sure that that foundation is accurate and informative.
Is there any place where there's policy judgment required to, I guess I'd ask, is this a technical problem which should be handled squarely by staff, or is this a policy and judgment problem that would benefit from input from the citizens of Palo Alto?
My initial response would be that it's initially technical, largely technical, to get to the space model. There may be things that come into as far as acceleration of pace and areas to focus that may be more policy driven after we do this initial base model.
Okay, but you've just stated that the base model will not be done for 12 months. So is it feasible to incorporate this into the work plan, or should this be priority number one for next year's work plan? I mean, we have 13 things, we can only get 5 or 6, right?
Exactly, and then making that division between what staff is doing and what the UAC is doing, so staff would be directed to finish the base model and provide some initial update, maybe an informational item on that, and then we would incorporate into fiscal year 2028 work plan those guiding principles of how do we progress to a 10 to 20-year model, and what's that pace look like?
And there is some policy decisions that the UAC could recommend for city council to consider. And, we were looking at a gas transition plan. I do not believe city council has taken a position of stopping the gas utility in that regard. So really that study and evaluation, that technical work first, what does that look like, I think is really important.
I don't know how to make a policy recommendation without talking like budget, right? Like what's the cost? And what's the implication of what does that look like? And so if we're data poor over the next year, I don't even know what the policy discussion is that we can viably have. Could staff clarify that for us so that we can ascertain whether this is something to agendize this year or next year?
So I can just opine that perhaps, because I think you're going to run into this as you move down this list.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciate, kind of nailing down the outcomes, right? The SMARTY kind of goals is what council has moved towards, and it's been helpful. This might be what we would consider a Q4 goal kind of thing, meaning it likely will, we don't want to lose track of it, we don't want to lose sight of it, but the likelihood of us getting it to this year is, it's not going to be until the latter portion of it, and it may spill over. So that's one way that we've signaled in our council prioritizations.
Okay, so we might say something along the lines of the UAC would review the results of the cost estimates around, or financial, I don't want to say cost, would review expected economic impacts of a gas transition plan and advise on what? Advise on policy related to the pace of transitioning?
Yeah,
As soon as Q4.
I mean, ultimately, I think you're looking for the language of review baseline infrastructure maps and explore potential targeted electrification, utilizing selection criteria aligned with these frameworks and cost, effectiveness, what was the other one you identified?
I don't know, whatever, the minutes are going to help us. But I guess I'd say they're like, okay, who cares whether we know the baseline infrastructure maps?
But you want to review them for the context of the policies to develop the 20-year plan.
Isn't it that we want
understand.
staff, we definitely
want
want staff to prioritize this, right? We want them to work on it. So to the extent that we're not going to see the outcome of this model until, it just has to be an item on here that's a priority, is to do a gas transition study and bring it to us for review. And we can put some more specifics around it.
I really think this has gotten sidetracked around a technical and capital issue. By my count, 4 commissioners recommended long-term business strategies for the gas utility, and the fact that we don't have one, or the fact that it would be hard to generate one, I think is not evidence for not needing one. I think we do need one, and we need the framework for one in order to make good decisions about what capital and what economic things and what technical things to be looking at. So I think the framework for a strategy which needs to be in place, and in parallel, do the technical work. I sort of feel like we're teeing up work that we feel comfortable doing over work that we really need to get done if we're going to make this transition.
Do you want to propose an edit?
Excuse me?
Do you want to propose an edit?
Well, I think I wrote it down: develop a comprehensive 10 to 20-year business plan for the gas utility that addresses strategic, financial, operational, organizational, and resource concerns.
But I think what we're hearing is we need this thing that's here first. So it's achieve progress toward a strategic
No,
plan.
if you read this, it says includes capital investment criteria. It's not mostly, certainly capital is important. It's obviously a capital intensive business, but it's not mostly a capital study. It's a business study to get to alternative plans that the city council can consider. If we were to do X, this is what it would cost. This is how it would impact our community. If we did Y, it would have these other set of impacts. I think that's what's really needed. And it's more or less the same thing for the electric utility. I shouldn't go there, but I think it's more or less the same thing there as well in terms of what we need. So this is, we have good technical people, good capital equipment people, and we're good at installing gas mains and water mains and so on. And I think that's what this is built around, but unfortunately, it's not what we need.
Could I second that, so to speak? In that, when we voted on gas rates, I voted no, and my primary reason was there were gas rates based on a business plan that seemed to be like this was a growth sector for us, and in fact, it's quite the opposite. So when I read Phil's write-up for this priority point, I thought, I agree with that. It can also include the need to right-size as best we can the 5-year business plan, CapEx plan, everything around gas, because the thing I voted no on a couple months ago didn't feel like the sort of business we consider gas to be, which is one we want to get out of long-term.
Vice Chair Phillips?
Could I suggest that I hear that we can make a lot of progress by Q4, but maybe not get all the way there. In some sense, that's okay. We can have a stretch goal, and if we make it, that's great. I would say something like the UAC will review a draft gas transition study, maybe leave out some of the details, because I would like to see within the next year some progress on this. And, that's a gas, and if it's not complete, I can't imagine going a year from now and saying, well, gee, we need another 3 to 6 months before we can see anything. I think given the interest, and call it a draft, call it a partial draft, I don't care, but something that we will see within the next year that gives us some clarity as to, what we might need to be doing differently in the relatively short run as well as the long run. And to me, it doesn't need to be wrapped up with a bow and, a formal study, but, that's just me. I can't see waiting more than a year to see some results or see some recommendations.
A specific example of something that would be useful to do beyond, the technical and gas mains and all that would be, what have other cities done who've tried to transition away from gas? What has been their experience? What have been some of the successes and failures? In other words, to build the infrastructure from multiple points of view, both technical and capital, and business and sustainability standpoint, to figure out how we might get there from here. And if we just limit ourselves to thinking about what we can do in 1 year, it's like, I remember folks I used to work with at HP, some group, the difference between talking about 15% cost reduction a year or cutting our costs in half in 5 years, right? They boil down to the same thing, but you can come up with if you set the goal of where we're going to be 5 years from now or something like that, you can expand the options for getting there. And I think we need to include all those aspects of the problem.
Okay, could I want to keep us moving. I know this is a really important item. Could I propose an edit? The UAC will review a draft gas transition study, or maybe we'll say we'll review progress towards a gas transition study, which doesn't put you on the hook for a draft one, but at least keeps us accountable to this, that addresses the political, economic, legal, environmental, regulatory, and financial. I said economic, but.
You're right.
Political, economic, legal, regulatory.
Yeah, regulatory is a good one I left out.
Right, that's okay. Operational. Regulatory and operational, maybe we'll just end with operational. Elements of the gas transition. A potential gas transition, let's just say that, of a potential gas transition.
I would take out,
Potential gas decommissioning, how about that?
Sounds great to me. I would leave out the word draft, but otherwise I like it.
Sure. Progress toward a gas transition study. That sounds great. Could we get rid of the rest of it? Because I don't need to see infrastructure maps, frankly. You guys are great. The utility is great at infrastructure maps. We should never really need to see this because we're not qualified.
What's an infrastructure map?
So I think the intention of this is to explore the action is not the infrastructure maps. The action is using the infrastructure maps
to inform this.
inform a selection
I
criteria.
agree, but
So I get that that's missing. There's a lot of words between there.
yeah.
could we
but-
take out everything after decommissioning?
Yes, my goal is to delete the rest of it, if that's okay with staff. Great.
But we still like maps. We don't have to have it in the document.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I don't need to see that in PowerPoint either. Okay, we feel good about that one?
Yeah, I would simply, I feel good about it. I would simply say, anything you can do to make this bullet closer to the thing that Phil wrote, that would be good.
Okay,
Does economic encompass rates?
yes, but we also will do rates later. So I think that it does, but I don't think it addresses it doesn't cover next year's rates.
But it
No, I'm talking about like what happens when only a few customers are left and we have to have
absolutely.
rates.
Yeah, and how big do the reserves need to be so that we can fund in 10 or 20, 30 years, we can fund the
Do you want to add the
subsidizing
word?
off gas.
Okay, do you want to add the word reserve elements? Well, we have economic, do you want to add economic and, if a reserve isn't operational and it's not economic, do you want to add that in? Otherwise, can we move on? Do you have any edits that you'd like to make?
No.
Okay, great. Can we move on?
No.
I mean, we've spent 20 minutes on this first one, so I've got to get us through 13 of them, plus any other ones. All right, can we do number 2?
Can I make one comment I think might expedite?
Please.
As I looked at these, I thought 7 of them were what I would call procedural.
Yes.
Which are things that we for sure need to do, like rates and so on, but, didn't happen to be on any of the commissioners' lists. Those items are 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. All those items, I think, have to be done.
I totally agree. Those are not UAC work plan that we do. We need to talk about communications and hear about them, but those aren't UAC priorities. I think it should be our goal to have fewer goals, just make 5, 6, 7.
8 was one of my priorities. And communications was one of my priorities, but
I didn't check 8, but I did check things like, setting rates and reviewing CapEx goes without
Okay.
saying.
We have is there a motion associated with that? Are you making a proposed change?
I would say we just accept those,
But I would like to make edits to them.
okay. Commissioner Croft, I was not
Yeah.
demeaning that one. I was simply saying that, we have to set rates, we have to do, there's things we have to do every year.
I have a specific proposal, and that is you have a list of 3 or 4 or 5 things. They do not include time of use, but things like rates, things like CapEx, things like looking at our communications and our customer surveys. They don't go without saying, but just make a short list that, of course, UAC does these 4, 5, 6 things, but our priority items, our new things, the things we want to draw attention to, is this other list. And that might be 6, 7 items.
Yes, we can do 5 to 6, and that was part of our proposed process. We're going to get to that after we edit the ones that are on the list right now. So could we please finish editing? I realize that some of them are going to go, I hope, that some of them are going to go significantly more quickly than the last one.
So are we in number 2?
We are on number 2. So,
What is number 2? Is it emergency? If you had to give it a headline, a 2-word headline, what is it? Is it water or is it emergency? What is it? Seriously, read it and try to tell me what that is.
you are welcome to make edits or propose edits. Would you like to make an
I
edit?
propose we call this thing emergency response plan. If that seems to be what it is, and water's part of it, but so is everything else.
Could someone explain what this is? I honestly,
Sounds
no,
like
I
it is.
honestly didn't understand what it was. Was this the document that we reviewed a month or 2 ago that,
I don't know.
okay,
Sorry, staff developed.
maybe
this.
someone can help
So,
explain to us.
and this
We
is
have
why staff is
3
here.
out of 5 who don't understand.
So could
what
we
it is.
clarify what number 2 is supposed to cover?
So again, some of these items, as you were mentioning, were kind of the baseline activities. This one was looking at basically our water system in terms of how we keep the system up and running for emergency, and then our preparedness as well. It was kind of taking time accounts from what we heard from the commission. Again, it is compliance related, so I can see how this, would be confusing in terms of how it's written up. It doesn't necessarily have to rise to the occasion. Again, we did a first cut of trying to figure out if this, and distill it to see if this was meeting your needs. If it doesn't, you can take it off the list.
Alan, it rises to the occasion. Emergency preparedness is arguably a top priority it was on somebody's list,
And exactly, so.
but it just needs to be written clear.
Staff provided a first cut, and again, it is up to the commission to make those changes, and that's why we provided ahead of time.
Okay, so my assessment of this one is that it does not cover the emergency and reliability elements that Commissioner Metz has encouraged us to think about, and it is quite limited to the water utility in particular. If there are, Commissioner Metz's comments were actually mostly around the power utility, in terms of reliability, not to say that the water utility is unimportant, but if this is supposed to encompass the 5-year drought, design drought discussion, it doesn't, so like that could be more specifically called out. If it's not supposed to cover that and it's supposed to be general emergency response and preparedness, then I would encourage us to change the language or strike the thing entirely.
I think I would strike it and replace it with something more understandable and more general.
And in the direction of emergency response and resiliency, or in the direction of the water utilities and our interaction with SFPUC?
The latter. We have another one, which is our interaction with SFPUC, which is number 3.
Okay, so the former. This is general risk, resiliency, and reliability. So what are, maybe we could be a bit more specific with staff in terms of, I know that we've done there's been some one-on-one conversation between staff and Commissioner Metz related to emergency preparedness plans. Are there policy or other elements, even public dissemination needs, where the UAC's input or the opportunity for a public forum around emergency preparedness, resiliency, and reliability would be helpful
If this is.
across the utilities?
If this is generally about reliability and resilience, then I would say there are 2 objectives, which are, number 1, reliability, set specific goals, quantify them, and communicate them to the community so that people can see how we're doing in terms of, this is particularly to your point about electricity, but communicate them. And then the second would be the one I proposed on emergency preparedness, which agreed, I wrote mostly thinking about electricity, but it would apply to anything, to be, as we agreed last year, to determine what is a design emergency, and establishing our risk framework with OES. There's nothing specific to electricity here.
Right, no, I
It's about
agree.
emergency preparedness.
So would we like to replace this, or is there, I don't want to direct staff to do things that they're not going to do and they don't have the resources to do. So,
Since no one has explained what this was about, I would suggest removing it.
I think we will remove this, but if we wanted to replace it with,
Okay.
if that was intended to cover your item on emergency preparedness and resiliency, then we need to give staff an opportunity.
Why don't we, I'm going to have Terry Crowley kind of wordsmith this a little bit, because we also had some comments from council and trying to have some reliability metrics, so maybe we can weave that into this and change it up.
That sounds great.
So my thought would be to focus this into the risk and resiliency assessment, so reliability and resiliency, and that we focus in on potentially for the next 12 months, water and electric utilities, and bring back policies that surrounding that, those 2 areas for those 2 utilities.
That sounds great.
And that could include the reliability metrics, the goals for the electric system, as well as, the long-term resiliency, and the same for water.
That's like SETI and outages and stuff.
It's SETI and safety, system availability for electric, and then for water, looking at, emergency preparedness, reliability, and those types of goals.
Does it include all the R&R stuff that Jonathan talks about? The same, that's included in this?
Yes. So that's kind of potentially a deeper dive of what Jonathan's brought before the UAC and other ad hoc committees.
Okay. And are there places where our input and our work is going to be particularly valuable in that? I mean, staff needs to deal with reliability and resiliency on a daily basis. What is it that we can contribute to that discussion?
So what would be helpful for me is,
Exactly.
so when we come back with the electric reliability goals, is that we have a conversation about like what is meaningful, right? So from a technical perspective, something might be meaningful to me, but not relate well to the community. And so having those conversations of developing that metric that's meaningful for the community for the UAC and potentially for the council, that would be a good discussion to have here at the UAC. I think for the water system, it would be a good discussion to say, how much money are we wanting to invest in reliability and resiliency of the water system, and how do we get there through our capital improvement program? And I think that's a measure of, what level of reliability do you want from your system, and so how fast do you move through your CIP plan? So I think those are two discussions that are basically policy issues.
Yep.
And that's good to have awareness at.
But if for water, I mean, and Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, like, we have backup wells, but that's it. Like, there just is not more that we're going to do. So I'm not sure that there's a lot of, is there a decision there, or is this primarily electric?
I would say that there's decisions in electric to be made about setting the metrics, and then how do you achieve the metrics or maintain those metrics, right? For water, I think you would look beyond just the supply of water, but you also look at what is your reliability through natural disaster, what's your resiliency, what's your ability to recover from a large earthquake or a large natural disaster, and how are you preparing for those things, right? So that's your investment in your system.
Yeah.
Which,
Isn't that mostly SFPUC? Like, our reliability isn't local, like, our reliability problems aren't
we
local.
maintain the distribution system, so that's, I guess, where I'm focusing.
Okay,
is the
okay.
distribution system that the city maintains, the storage system that the city maintains, the pumping,
Right.
all
Okay.
of that, so that redundancy.
So that would be a specific look at Palo Alto distribution system reliability on the water side.
That is correct.
Okay, great. Let's clarify that, just so that we know that this is not us trying to set SFPUC reliability across a fault zone, right? Frankly, not our purview. But local distribution system reliability absolutely is. Maybe we focus on distribution system reliability for both water and electric.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay, so instead of goals for the water and electric utilities, might we say goals related to the distribution systems of the water and electric utilities?
I think that's a little too narrow, because we're really concerned about delivering water in an emergency, for example. So it's not only about the distribution system.
Well, the distribution system comprises of the connections to SFPUC, the
Yes.
storage, the pumps,
That's right, yeah, absolutely.
the backup
All of
diesel
it.
generation, the interconnections,
Yeah.
with other agencies. So I think it is more comprehensive when you say distribution.
Right, but to the chair's point, we have wells, and also we have,
We could say distribution and backup supplies.
yeah.
Okay, great. How about distribution system and backup supplies of the water and electric utilities?
I think on electric utilities, is there any element of local generation that might come into this resiliency plan?
Exactly.
So, for example, do we want to make electric utilities kind of have a descriptor on it,
Yeah, I don't think, it's different for the electric utility. There's not a backup supply for the electric utility with.
How about local supplies, related to the local supplies and distribution systems?
It's the delivery. It always comes down to actually delivering
Yeah.
the water or the electricity. And if we may set a target, just for example, might set a target for reliability or resilience in an emergency that would require us to have local generation or something like that.
Great. So can we say the local supply and distribution of water and power?
That would work. I mean, you may be able to simplify it and just say delivery of services, delivery of
But
water
I do
and power
not want to get
services.
into gas,
Water and-
fiber, or,
And
So
sometimes
delivery of water and
Well,
electric
if-
services.
if you do delivery, sometimes that can conflate it to SFPUC and other supplies. So trying to narrow it, I thought
I'm
was
trying
one
to
of the
keep this
concerns.
very narrow. Okay, great. Could you get rid of that last piece, and then could we move on? We saved 3 minutes relative, no, we saved more than that, 8 minutes relative to the other one. Okay. Does anyone have any concerns with that, or can we move to the number 3?
I just don't quite, should there be a comma after resiliency? I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Maybe get rid of the and add one more comma, because reliability, comma, resiliency, comma,
Oh, okay.
great. Okay. I'm a fan of the Oxford comma, but that's just me. Could you put a comma after response, please? Because I edit for a living, you know?
There you go.
Okay. Number 3.
So you go for being lead author.
That's right.
Vampire Weekend.
Review and recommend to City Council rate changes for
I would
these.
say this goes on the list of things we,
I
whatever
would
you call that.
really like to change this to include recycled water.
Do we have rates on that? I don't know.
No.
Should we? Is that, I mean,
Yes.
this just, okay, this item to me just is one of those, of course, we review all rate
Unless my recycled water was supposed to go somewhere else.
somewhere else.
It's a good place.
I think,
It's a strategic thing to.
It would be a rate change technically, so. I
yes,
mean,
I think so too. So let's include recycled water here, because our specific purview as a UAC includes recycled water. Just to make it very clear on the purposes and duties of the UAC. Okay. Thank you.
When we put time of use here, it feels like we're kind of slipping it in, whereas time of use, I think it's somewhere else in the list. It should not just be slipped into this rate review thing. Rate review is just something that we do.
I think the other topic on time of use kind of got to my point, which is more like reviewing the pilot. It's not just rates, so I think we'll get to that one.
Okay.
Then as an editor, I'd suggest to take it out, keep this document simple. Of course, we
Great.
review all rates, including electric and E3, E7, time of use, everything.
Demand charges.
Yeah,
and
everything.
Everything else that we do.
Okay. So we'll strike including time of use rates, please. But I would,
COSA, I mean, all COSAs.
well, but I'm going to respectfully disagree on that one. I would like to ask, could staff please remind the UAC about the timing on the most recent COSAs for these different utilities?
Looks like water's the only one.
The current one for this year would be the cost of service for water. I don't have the entire list because there are.
That's okay.
We can bring that
Can you
back.
remind me when we did the electric one?
24?
24. Okay, great.
We'll look that up as you
Can
move
you
along.
remind us whether in that cost of service analysis, there was any discussion of reliability or access maintenance costs vis-à-vis consumptive charges on the electric power utility? Like when we structured, when that COSA was performed?
Are you talking about fixed charges?
Yes, fixed charges.
We have I believe that's when we
Right.
added the fixed charge.
Yeah.
But we
But
have
the
a
relative
smaller.
size of that
The relative
fixed charge?
size of that fixed charge in comparison to other utilities is small.
But in the COSA that was performed, was there a specific recommendation about the balance of a fixed charge versus a variable charge? Or was that a policy decision that was made?
It was part of the COSA.
Well, I know, but is that a value judgment or is that a
It is part of rate
regulatory?
making. I didn't see Lisa was there, I would ask her
okay.
to come up earlier. But it is a part, I believe it's $5 for the fixed
No,
charge.
but that's nothing.
So it is smaller than our surrounding entities and the rest of the IUs.
By like what percentage?
I think I wanted to say percentage, I believe Palo Alto's is 5 and the IOUs and PG&E is around 25.
Great. Do I need to add anything, or are you good?
Correct me, please.
So in the most recent cost of service study, Palo Alto went from 0 in the fixed charge to this $5 level. And so that was a finding from that most recent COSA study.
And that $5 fell out of the COSA, or that $5 was voted on by UAC because it was a small incremental increase relative to 0?
It resulted from the COSA study.
And do we believe that that holds given our current grid modernization efforts?
I would just.
Sorry to grill you. I don't
No,
mean to be
it's
so.
going deep, and it's a good question, but working from previous experience at other agencies, there's an art and a science with your rate setting, right? So the financial model that informs your rates is very strict and detailed, and it allocates costs, right? The allocation of cost to the customer classes and the balancing between fixed charges and variable charges is the art of the cost of service and the development of rates. And there is some policy discussions in there, and so you may understand or be familiar with water. Generally, the fixed charge in water is about 30% of the total revenue requirement. For electric, it tends to be much, much less, but the electric industry is moving away from that smaller fixed charge and moving towards something that's more equatable to water.
But if we're embarking on a $400 million grid mod project, that's going to significantly change the fixed cost. And unless we just peanut butter the whole thing over all Palo Alto, if instead we're putting it in certain substations more than others, again, my request for a heat map, then, the bottom line is grid mod's going to have an impact and a change on COSA for electric. And the last one we did was 23-24 for that fiscal year. And, it doesn't mean we need to rush and do one this year, but in the next 2-3 years, I would imagine it's on the.
So 5 years is standard for new COSAs. I guess my line of questioning here is that, as part of rate study this year, I would love to see an analysis or further discussion around that art of rate setting and the balance of fixed charges versus variable charges on electric power utility. I think that is incredibly important given the both the growth of on-site generation and the reliability service that we provide through grid connectivity and the planned investments that we are making in grid mod. So to reflect that art, I would love to see staff do some thinking about what the impacts of increasing or the benefits of increasing our fixed charges and decreasing our variable charges might be. So it's going to help us electrify, right? And if we could be specific about that in this rate setting piece for electric, I think that would be, or we could incorporate that down below, I guess is maybe the broader point. But to me, that's pretty important.
But Megan, we were super specific about it. Staff was very specific about it when we did rate setting. We talked all about fixed costs and variable. It's not the same as doing a COSA, but we did discuss it a lot. We always do.
I guess I'm a little confused on what the value of doing this outside doing a COSA would be.
I don't think we need to redo a COSA. I think it is time to redo the COSA for water. But I think that there are, as Terry pointed out, there's an art to that rate setting because all rates and utilities, which are monopoly peanut butter costs, right? Like by definition.
They don't, well, they allocate to customer classes.
Commissioner, if you'd
Could you
mind
turn
putting
your
your
mic on,
microphone,
please?
please.
Well, but spatially, they peanut butter. So I think the point is, there is an art
Our
to
largest
doing
commercial
this.
customers are spatially concentrated. They are not, spread evenly.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
they vary by substation, and grid mod will affect the commercial burden.
That's right. Anyway, we can come to this later, but, I'm sorry.
I agree with everything you say, but I'm not quite sure.
Could you turn on your video?
Yes, I will. I'll try to. And
Thank you.
I thought I would. And having sat through the gas COSA process, I'm a great believer in the fact that there is art and there's no objectively perfect way of doing this. It's just, what are we getting out of doing it outside of the COSA? We can't use it to change rates unless it's a COSA.
I believe that we can change rates. Go ahead.
So I think the first question is, what is the cadence of the new ones coming out? The water one is planned for this year.
Right.
We have a kind of, I wouldn't say rotation, but a plan to go through other ones as well, including wastewater, which is also one of your goals, to make sure that looks correct in affordability. For us to go forth and do another analysis on the electric is another engagement and another task that we would have to push back in terms of staff availability. So wanted just to put that in for clarity. It may be something that you put in for a future year in terms of when we do that electric COSA, that you want to have those requirements there and looking at the fixed cost as we develop that scope. And we can certainly bring that back.
Does increasing our fixed charges more than our variable charges require a new COSA, or can we just do it?
We would have to have a COSA to make those changes throughout.
Okay, but in terms of the art element of that, the existing COSA, there is an art there. If we, did the COSA that we have, does the current COSA provide us any leeway in rebalancing fixed versus variable charges in the electric power utility?
What it would be, Commissioner, would be similar to what you did with gas, where we had an original COSA, we go back, we reassess the data, we revise the COSA, and we come back based on the policies.
So there wasn't any leeway in that initial one?
Again, a COSA is an amalgamation of assumptions. And so in compliance with law and reasonable assumptions is deemed by precedent.
Okay.
So you would have to go through that same process to change that ratio.
Fine. We will table it this year. I just want to put it on staff's radar and frankly, the rest of the UAC's radar, that I think that this is pretty important to come back to as we're talking about electric power utility in the future.
On this topic of rates, we have seen on topic of affordability. So I had in one of mine the affordability of electric. We have prior, as a UAC, highlighted the difficulties of the affordability of water and electric, and I wonder if we could add that in here, that we want particular focus on affordability of electric and water rates, or prioritize, really on all rates, but do we want to ask for any special work to?
Do we want to add at the end, and fiber optic services to ensure affordability? Or with a priority on affordability?
Yeah, I like that.
We have something similar on item 5.
Prioritize.
An item number, a line, I'll call line 5.
That's true. That is
It's
actually.
page you go to ensure affordability across the 5-year
Yeah.
rate projections and financial plans. So, I
Thank you,
I
Alan.
love the word affordability.
But that is a CIP item, isn't it?
If you do want to add it here, that's certainly welcomed.
Okay, I think putting it in rates is more appropriate because it is where we see the results of not only CIP, but everything getting combined and charged to the user.
Agree.
Okay, do we feel good about that one? Excellent.
A tiny little question, fiber optic service, is it wrong to call it fiber internet services, and people know what internet is? Or is dark?
We also have dark fiber as well, so we're trying to keep it a little more generic.
Should just call it fiber services?
This means dark fiber and fiber to the home.
Correct.
Is that right?
Sorry. Okay. Number 4. could we just say on implementation?
Yeah. I read that report with not despair, but I mean, going that direction, right? Do we want to force ourselves to prioritize this at this point? It's going to cause our rates to go up. Are we worried about, I mean, we asked to review reserves, hoping that we could consolidate a bunch of accounts and use that as a way to address affordability of rates. And instead, what we heard from Baker Tilly is, if you want to go down this road, it could really have an impact on the upward direction. So my thought on this would be to, not prioritize it, essentially. We want to prioritize our solidity, or what do I want to say, how solid our reserves are on a wholesale basis. But I don't know how much we want to dig into this particular topic.
Can I just remind us that at the present moment, we are just editing, and we will work on prioritization later. So if there's any edits to this, I will entertain those at this time, and then we'll come back, Commissioner Croft, to whether we want to address this year.
I don't have any edits, and I like it.
I would just, there's a typo, review and
There
advise
is.
on reserve policy changes. So just in that very first line, reserve policy changes.
Well, I think it's reserve policies because there's different policies for the different.
Oh, yeah, good point, good point, good point.
And I hope review goes without saying if we're going to advise. You could
Well,
delete-
first, we have not had an informational
No, it
report out
should,
on
it should
this, and we
remain,
do need to review it.
I'm just looking to get rid of words.
Okay.
it should remain policies. It should not be changed.
But the comma splice before that is
Get rid of changes.
irking me. But we'll let that go.
No, don't insist on commas.
That was a splice, that's okay. Okay, I think generally, it's good, it's fine. We good on this one?
Yep.
Okay. Number 5, which is the 5-year capital improvement program.
Be explicit about the word bond market. We're going into the bond market. Not just financing mechanisms. I mean, it's bonds versus pay as you go.
Are there other mechanisms aside from bond finance and pay-as-you-go that are being contemplated?
We do have state revolving fund loans, so I think financing mechanism, if you want to put a little more granularity to it, maybe we can put revenue bonds or.
Just bonds. Why would he?
Well, you really like those SRF loans, let me tell you.
Love them.
Can we just leave it because we also have grants? I mean, we have.
Whatever. We'll never know what we meant, but okay. Fiber.
Can I just ask a question about the 5-year capital improvement program? We tend, in my experience, to look at this on a utility-by-utility basis. And this is recommending, it's discussed as a single capital improvement program. Can you clarify, could staff kindly clarify whether that is a change or whether you intend to address this utility by utility?
Staff's intent with this was to not look at it as a holistic, covering all the utilities at one single time. Staff's intent was to use one line item that would cover each of the single utilities, and we would discuss those individual utilities capital improvement plans. So such as grid mod is not shown on here, grid mod
Right.
would definitely be included under the capital improvement program. And then you would also have a capital improvement program for water that would influence your rates, and wastewater that influences your rates. And so we would talk about those things individually,
Right.
but not necessarily in a one holistic conversation that would dilute any one of those individual utilities.
Okay. Are there, I mean, there's a clear request on behalf of the commissioners to prioritize electric power and to prioritize, personally, wastewater. Realistically, I think we tend to do a very broad, like, when we've gotten into this task, we've tended to do like either not nearly enough detail or way too much detail.
And you may want to add on there is with, with a priority focus on the electric utility and wastewater
And the wastewater utility. Yeah.
Because that could be specific to that goal. So you receive the standard or normal type of information and
Yeah.
with a higher focus on the wastewater utility and electric utility. That's we could make
Would
that
that be
modification.
helpful?
No?
Okay, well, it would be helpful for me. Does anyone else object to that?
If what you mean helpful, I mean, of course it's helpful, and it goes without saying that grid mod is in our CapEx. What I'm trying to convey is the need for grid mod to be a all caps headline priority topic for UAC in the months and years ahead, as it inevitably is going to be. And so, can't say it more strongly than that.
Can you just propose an edit and we can comment on what you are wanting to add? I do think grid mod needs to be its own item, personally.
So that would be my edits.
Okay, if you are welcome to propose language on number 5, which is what we're currently working on.
Number 5, just like number 3 before it was we review rates, number 5 says we review CapEx. Like I say many times, goes without saying. A separate item would be, if you want me to edit it now, I don't think you do, but it would be discuss grid mod. It would be a condensed version of my 2 or 3 page memo. Discuss grid mod in every way, all the time.
Okay, could we add on number 5, with a special focus on 5-year capital improvement, 5-year capital improvement program, we have 5-year again, financial plans, with, maybe at the very end, financial plans with a special focus on the electric and wastewater utilities.
Is that really needed? I mean, I'm pretty interested in gas as well, given the other discussions.
I think we've had a lot of discussion about the gas transition study already, and so not that it wouldn't be covered, but I mean, we can also take it
My
out.
suggestion about grid mod would be to discuss it in the context of number 7.
Okay, so Commissioner Phillips, you're uncomfortable with electric and gas and wastewater?
I just don't see the particularly if we're going to have grid
Okay.
mods separately, why there would be a special focus. I mean, I don't know what it means.
I think it's just, that's where our biggest capital improvement investments are going to be. So and insofar as we want to share with council what our priorities are and where we want staff to prioritize their time and effort, I think there are elements of calling out specific utilities that could be especially helpful.
Fine. I mean,
The only
Okay.
thing is, the wastewater treatment plant's CapEx is outside our purview.
And I think that is a problem.
It's not a problem, it's just that it's actually, it's an anti-problem, it's out of scope.
Well,
Want to dig into that one?
I think it is challenging to set rates when you have no control over the capital plan.
Yeah, that's what happens in water. It's called a CPUC.
But there's actually some internal citywide accountability to that we do have agency over, and that I think we should do something about. That is my 2 cents. As you can see in my, I tried to be very lean, guys. I really think that the capital improvement plan and operating expenses for the wastewater utility are very important for us to dig into and are not currently in our operational purview, but absolutely should be.
When you look at all we've accomplished in the utility space, according to our work plan last year, imagine what we could do for the wastewater treatment plant. If you put that in the minutes, I hope you'll note it was a joke.
I'm fine with it as edited.
I'll just leave it out. But I
We should have a colleague's memo or something on the topic. I mean, if that's what we really believe, I don't think it necessarily belongs in this, but there should be some potential action. Maybe we can take it offline.
there was not a strong reflection of that, I mean, you know, lest you think I came up with this list. My own second priority didn't make it in a particularly large way, so
I didn't read that second item to mean that, so it's cool.
Oh, well, yes,
Commissioner, if you might,
it was,
please use your microphone.
there was a lot of discretion there in the second item. But anyway, let's move on to number 6.
Can I actually make one, just for clarity, because it's gonna hurt my brain. So we say including projects to be included. Can we just say which projects to include? Sorry.
Capital improvement plan.
Program, which projects to include?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. It was hurting my brain. Which projects to include?
Maybe we don't need that at all. Just capital improvement program, timing of the projects, et cetera.
That was the other option, but I thought you wanted,
get rid of that.
wanted to pick the projects that.
No,
so if
I
you
don't
wanna
need to
add or
pick the
subtract.
projects. I want to see the plan. And know that the plan is being correctly developed. With a holistic viewpoint. Okay. Number 6, fiber to the premises.
I'm sorry, Chair. The clerk still has the track changes in item number 5 with a special focus on electric and wastewater utilities. We've got that generally is great. Let's move on.
Want to keep that?
Please. If only because it gives me cover. All righty. Fiber to the premises. I appreciated the inclusion of KPI discussions here. Does anyone have any edits?
I would be strong, I would say that since this is us, I think we should commit to make a recommendation to City Council. So it's not, to me, it's not just reviewing. I mean, we're doing a hell of a lot of reviewing. I guess that's, that's the nature of the UAC. But this is one where I think we should commit ourselves to make a recommendation, which could be, continue expansion or not.
Are we going to have, could we get a refresh from staff on where we will be 12 months from now in a, okay, great. So we'll be done with not only phase 0, but phase 1 or whatever?
I think we should, I don't think we will be done with the totality of phase 1 with data to then report out on, but I do think we will have data associated with the subset of phase 1, the initial pilot area, and then, we can make some assumptions and have that policy discussion.
Great. can I ask how council is going to feel about recommendations that come before the conclusion of phase one?
Well, I think if you see some big red flags.
Yeah, you're going to want to hear about it.
That will, yeah, we want to hear
Yeah,
about it.
great.
This is, I'm glad you asked the question, because somewhere I was looking to make the comment that at some point in time, if there are things that are already approved by council,
Yeah.
but you think are a concern, then you obviously want to raise that with staff, and use the right format to get that information to council, which might be, staff creates a discussion item on the pilot. I mean, a study session, excuse me, as opposed to an action item, which would be a public hearing.
Yeah. Okay.
I think this item, if you look at the commissioner priorities, two of them had to do with go, no-goes, one had to do with cash, and another one had to do with execution. So I think somehow this has to incorporate the idea of money, right, particularly with the city's fiscal situation.
So do we want to,
The metrics here are engineering-ish metrics.
Yep.
We need to have business metrics.
well, there's a financial forecast projection, but you'd like to add, how do you want to edit this one?
Where does it?
I have a suggestion on the I was also going to point out, I think we need to have, instead of financial forecast projection, a revised financial model, like revised long-term financial model and capital expenditure estimates.
I think the numbers I would like to see would be revenue, and it could be a projection of revenue, the take rate times, what we expect to get in other areas. Revenue, cash flow, and number of customers signed up, I think, and CapEx. That basically would spin profitability of the business, right?
That would be great, Phil, but every time we discuss fiber, this issue of like phase 0, phase 1, what's pilot, we just heard that there won't be any, we've just heard that phase 1 won't be actionable or finished in this coming fiscal year, if I heard right. And if that's the case, all we'll have to go on is the phase 0 that I kind of think of as a technical, work the kinks out. It's not going to give us take rate. It's not going to give us revenue projections. We're not going to be able to make conclusions, I think, even about pricing. I mean, our time of use pilot has less than 10 users. You could never make any, model on the back of that. And I fear that in the course of FY27, if it's, as we just heard from the desk, if that's the way things are going to be for fiber, we're not going to make any assumptions or recommendations next year. That's sobering, but I don't see, how else can we see it?
I think we still need to see the KPIs that they do collect. And I think we should always have a working financial model, like what we think it's going to cost us as we roll it out. And we can make different assumptions on the take rate. You could make different assumptions on the pricing. Those are really easy things to change in the model, but a lot of the stuff is going to be, we're going to figure out how much it costs to put the cable in, to attach each house, and those things should be in a revised model.
Yeah.
And I think that can be informative for whatever that's worth. Remember, this initial phase is almost 1,000 passings. So it's not the whole city, and it's not thousands that were initially in the larger geofenced phase 1 area, but it can give you an initial snapshot. And I think that's what staff's intent is to bring that forward, update the business model to identify if there are any early red flags. This is an evolving business line in general. And so having these checkpoints, I think, is the intention to keep an eye on those flags early so that we can continue to make informed decisions.
Yeah, I think
You can also do an assessment of the competitors at that point as well, because that should be data that's available.
that's a great point. I think staff shared early on with at least, I don't know, as a finance subcommittee, shared an economic model that went out 35 years in the future or something, just updating that with the new information. As Commissioner Cross said, what are the take rates we're seeing? What are the costs that we're actually seeing? How would we update given what we've seen? That may not mean it's not the final, but it'll give us a good indication. When we went into this, does it look like we were over optimistic or over pessimistic or about right?
Okay. Are we recommending changes to these KPIs, or are we going to keep this as is? Or any further changes to the KPIs?
Yeah, I had one suggestion, which was not a change to the KPIs, but whether the scope of this should be increased. You know, basically, we're talking about looking at the pilot and then evaluating it a little more quantitatively. What I was suggesting was find ways to accelerate the cash flow, which through harder, more intense sales marketing, or possibly through other connection methods beyond fiber to the home, we might be able to accelerate that.
Should we say review fiber to the premises, utility, financial standing, and pilot results?
So I guess the
I think it's
question
important.
is, this says we're going to inform a recommendation. I mean, that says to me, why don't we say review and make a recommendation?
Sure, the way to write that could be is to recommend next steps.
Okay. Review and recommend next steps
Right. For example,
following the fiber to the premises policy results.
like one really important thing would be, we're talking about take rates, but supposing the take rate's lower than what was forecast, is that because people change their minds, they don't really want it now, or is it because we could do a better job at sales or some other factor? I think it's important to understand those factors, and as this says now, to recommend actions.
What is going on with this screen thing?
And just recommend next steps.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Number 7, can we reset our clock so that I can?
Can we please take out the comma after the word revised? It's a revised long-term financial model. Thanks.
Great. Can we reset the clock, please? Just so I can try to keep us on time. Okay. Number 7 appears to be our grid mod, what could be abbreviated as grid mod. Do we want to expand this one to include other elements?
Is this grid mod or data centers? It's not clear to me. Since it talks about large commercial loads and non-residential.
These are large commercial loads that are for research and development. Some folks can say data centers. That's not really what we're seeing here in Palo Alto. We're seeing those larger loads associated with kind of research and development and tech companies.
So this was not grid mod per se.
This is not
I'm
grid
sorry,
mod per
this
se.
is data centers. I just misspoke or misremembered.
The term is electric, large electric loads, because sometimes data centers is frankly too limiting or too expensive.
Do we want, just to clarify, the including but not limited to a financial charge for the reservation of electric system capacity, is that like long-term reservation of electric system capacity? Is that what we're intending to say there? Like, we don't want people to come in with big loads and then go out of business and not have any liabilities? I mean, we've talked about that before, that our contracts have to have is that what that means?
So one of the intents that staff would like to develop a policy around is, one, we have new businesses that come in and they want to understand what capacity is available, right? And once they understand what capacity is available to that particular site, they want to reserve that capacity for their project that they're developing. The concern is that, do they make that reservation at no cost, or is there a small fee that reserves that in place? That's step one, right? So they'll have a policy around that. Step two is that as they develop their site and their project, what's the cost recovery agreement for that development of that? Do they pay everything up front? Is there some other mechanism that's a portion up front and a portion paid out over time? Is there a risk that if they don't meet certain metrics with their load and usage, that they have to pay additional fees? That's the second part of that policy. And then that kind of that tail end of that is the third part, is what's the rate structure for these larger research or development type loads? Is it still appropriate for the large commercial rate, the existing rate for those customers, or should there be something else that modifies that rate? Say a demand charge that's a little bit different or unique for that type of customer class. So that's kind of the three parts to this. It really is focused on those large commercial loads, but there's a three-step process that we go through. And some of the challenge we have right now is everybody is fighting for available capacity. And so how do you fairly allocate that available system capacity, but not necessarily provide it to one person for free, and they hold it hostage and prevent maybe somebody else from coming in and providing that broader benefit to the community?
That sounds extremely important. The question I had about the long-term commitment to take the energy that they are contracting for, is that incorporated in this somehow?
It could be incorporated in that cost recovery agreement. It could be incorporated into a rate agreement. And so there's a different structure in there. We can talk through that, but that's the intent, is to try and put this as a goal or a priority to finish something inside of the next 12 months, so that we can actually be consistent and effective in working with this type of customer.
Okay. I'm going to move on after one more minute. So Vice Chair Phillips, you get the last word on this one.
Oh, good. Is this a study, like a comprehensive study that you're planning to do and come up at some point in the next 12 months with a policy to present that says for large commercial loads and people who want to reserve capacity, here's a new rate structure, a new policy? What are you thinking? This is something that would come to us, and does it have to go to city council, or because it's new rates?
That's correct, is that to have those initial discussions with the UAC about the policy for reserving system capacity, a policy for cost recovery through the development of the project, and then potentially have that discussion about the existing rates and how those are appropriate, or potentially discussions about how those would be adjusted for these large customers.
And potentially new products. I don't know if you're talking about interruptible load or any of this stuff, but is that on the table?
It could include standby charges or special facility charges.
Okay, thank you. I support it.
Great.
And
it doesn't require a new COSA. I'm kidding. You don't have to respond to that. Okay. I did not hear any proposed edits, so I'd like to move on.
I had one question, it's not an edit.
Okay.
Which is, one of my priorities is electric utility business strategy, of which I would say this is an important, proper subset.
Great.
So do we take that up here, or as a separate item?
I think that's a separate item.
Okay.
Let's proceed to number 8. Could you reset the clock, please? Thank you. E1 rate design.
I think this is meant to be review and evaluate preliminary results of the E1 electric utility time of use rate pilot. Is that results of the pilot? It's not really correct, on energy usage patterns to inform further implementation of the full Palo Alto community. I mean, financial impacts to customers and utility, I would expand that.
In the future, I think we should have Google Docs so we can all.
Where are we? Okay, so I don't see any edits going in. Review and evaluate preliminary results of the E1 electric utility time of use rate pilot, comma, changes in, strike design on. So it says changes in energy usage patterns to inform further implementation to the full Palo Alto community, comma, financial impacts to customers and utility. And utility, sorry, customers and utility.
Do you want to
That's fine
move
for me.
the inform further implementation to the end of that? Because it now doesn't quite make sense.
Sure, so you would take out to inform further implementation to the Palo
Yeah, maybe
Alto
just-
community and put that at the end. So cut it and then paste it at the end.
Yes.
Benjamin Franklin refused to take the pen of the Declaration of Independence because he would not write something that would be subjected to a committee.
Well, I pity staff for having had to take the first shot at this. We can thank staff for kindly taking the first shot at this.
Thomas Jefferson will.
Okay, and then put an and after patterns, so it'll go energy usage patterns and financial impacts to customers and utility. That's fine.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Let's reset the clock and move on to PPAs. We have a lot of power utility items here, and I think it may be helpful just if staff wouldn't mind kind of clustering those as a series of numbers. I think it would aid in our discussion later on if there's an offline thing that you guys could do while we're continuing to edit.
This includes the integrated resource plan, which we haven't looked at.
No, absolutely. I'm not, this has nothing to do with number 9. I just am going to note that we have many different power things. And I'd like to get a sense of which numbers are more power related, which numbers are, we have to do these things no matter what. So if somebody could think about numerical ordering here to facilitate prioritization, that would be helpful. Okay, so we have number 9, which is procuring these new power purchase agreements.
And this
We don't procure.
Yeah, so
I'd just like to make that
What I heard
point.
was review and recommend approval
Okay,
of new power purchase agreements.
great. That sounds great.
Okay.
And what about a bigger IRP? Rachel, you've often asked about status of IRP. Is that something that be called out here?
Just seeing the portfolio, the power portfolio, I know you guys do an IRP periodically. I'm not sure when are you due to do one next?
IRP? We'll look that one up, and you can, because that might be a separate item.
I'm guessing it was 2023, just, I know we looked at it once, and that's why I thought we looked at it every year, but then I realized we don't do it every year. If we're due to do one, we should put them on here, but if not, it would just be to, review the power portfolio into the future, because it always tails off, and see what we're going to do to fill in our requirements in the future, including the power purchase
Yeah,
agreements.
Maybe what we add in there is also aligned with electric portfolio strategy and integrated resources plan. So why don't we just specifically put it in there, so we make sure we have that there.
Okay, that sounds great.
The last one was 23.
For this one, I want to suggest adding in demand forecast.
Could be flat, could be 70%, who knows?
So can we just
I
go
was
to
curious.
drafting? Alan, you made a suggestion.
Yeah, so I was going to add, sorry, can I find this? Long-term portfolio strategy and integration, consistency with the integrated resources plan.
Isn't that our long-term electric portfolio strategy? I mean,
Isn't the portfolio strategy a subset of the integrated resource plan?
I was trying to be specific on the integrated resources plan. I mean, some folks could, maybe we change the long-term electric portfolio strategy just, with compliance to our RPS. I'm looking left and right here.
Okay, guys, it's fine. Just take out the and integration and consistency with, and just say and aligned with the city's electric portfolio strategy and the integrated resources plan. So get rid of the with.
Works.
I just can't have integrated in there twice. Okay, that's fine. Moving on. 34 seconds. Sorry, I'm 10 SCAP.
Well, this is almost verbatim to what we have in last year's plan, and I would be hard pressed to tell you what UAC did to
We have a meeting on
advise
Friday.
on the SCAP.
We have a meeting Friday.
Yeah, so that's good.
TBD.
What's our advice going to be?
So that agenda is being
That's, yeah, I was going to say,
published.
not on the agenda for tonight, so we will not discuss it.
Does this even need to be a priority for us? Why not delete the whole thing?
I feel like SCAP for us, like, we care about it, right? It's important for the utility, but I'm not sure the funding and financing strategies are the thing that we need to highlight here. It almost feels like review SCAP goals and progress and strategies for aligning the utility with those goals. And it's because
I think
it falls
that's the
into.
important thing, the alignment of CPAU with SCAP, because
Right.
it's kind of nutty to be having a plan for sustainability without the participation of the only group that can make it happen.
And are we seeing the funding and financing because we're thinking of taking money from our cap and trade?
Correct.
Cap and invest.
So the conversations and the commitment by the city, a lot of the funds being used, available funds, restricted reserves, can be coming from the cap and invest fund, the public benefits charge, the low carbon fuel standard credits. So those are restricted utility revenues that benefit both the utility, the customers, and the climate and sustainability goals.
Okay.
So there's levers you can pull in terms of where those funds can be used, and that impacts affordability and then the priorities.
Okay, I see why that's important, and I'm actually okay with the language. I would like us to align all of our discussions with SCAP, but I see that this is a very specific one.
Okay. Number 11, report on and seek advisory positions. I'm not going to be doing any reporting. I don't know if, was this,
It was on last year. It's every year.
I think the point for us is to provide advice on positions on so I'd say, take out the report on and seek advisory, just say, provide advice on, UAC positions on legislative. Is the way the way I see it would work is the reporting is done by staff. We come back and say, yeah, we think definitely we should be, lobbying for that, or no, we shouldn't be.
great. So provide UACs advisory positions.
Could we just say advise council or advise on?
But we're not going to advise on those proposals. I mean, right?
So if you'd like the Muni Code language, it's formulate and review legislative proposals for recommendation to city council, blah, 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 blah.
Formulate and review? I don't want formulating anything.
I agree, so I would say
Review.
review and recommend.
Review and recommend advisory positions. Let's do that. Okay, great. Number 12. Annual report on customer survey results, communication methods, and new initiatives. For example, Commissioner Croft's request around leak notifications, including review of effectiveness of those engagements.
I mean, to me, it's, what we do is review and approve just in the spirit of having
That's right. We need a verb here.
verbs.
So, okay, any concerns there?
I mean, I don't know how others feel about this. I don't want to belabor it terribly long. I do feel like many, many times we wonder if the community knows what we're doing, and having some kind of more formulaic way of getting in touch with them, that's what I'd like to see. But I don't think it's the most important thing on this list, so.
Instagram account.
Yeah, that would be actually probably helpful, or even commenting on Nextdoor, which is not our policy.
Do we, okay. Do we have anything?
Nothing wrong with striking things.
Well, yes, but we're not striking right now.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, but no
Apologies,
thank
Chair.
you.
I still want to hear about them. I'm just not recommending a change to this particular item, but I still think communication is extremely important. I don't want to strike it at this point.
Okay. Provide advise, I think there's a typo there. 13. Advice to the Bosco Board Director, Vice Mayor Stone, clearly communicating UAC's recommendation for Palo Alto's perspectives and priorities regarding SFPUC water policies. Could we please replace that S with a C? Right, we're either advising or we.
Sorry, just to go back to item 12, I don't know if you're actually approving the customer survey results?
We can just review.
Just need a review.
So get rid of, you can strike approve.
Thanks.
I prefer to unclearly communicate.
Meredith does a good job. She'll be very happy.
Appreciate my jokes.
Is this number 13? I mean, I didn't put water. I know, there've been several people that are extremely vocal about needing to get to SFPUC with our comments. Is this the only way we're going to do it is through Vice Mayor Stone, or do you guys want to collaborate with him on strategies to, I don't know if this
I think
is,
this is a very important question, and I would like to defer to our council member representative to the UAC to advise us on how to advise relative to action number 13.
Yeah, I do think that this is a cooperative effort that has to be driven by staff and council, and the vice mayor happens to be, the sort of the point person on this, but, and you've gone over this before in terms of how difficult this is, and I think the action has to be probably driven by staff, is my off the cuff. I mean, you're on record, so, being there to, take action to create some changes in the current policies or something like that, where you're working with staff to make that happen. But I think it has to be, it has to be driven by council and council representatives, so it definitely has to be done through that person. But that's about all I can say.
Maybe more concretely, I will just say that there was some discussion of like, okay, what do we actually, I'm not sure that we are able to provide strong recommendations in the current environment, and that most of what I've heard has been a request for information rather than a request for changes. Because frankly, we've had a bunch of wet years. They're not putting any money in this year or next year. Maybe they are, but we'll not go any further down that rabbit hole. But like, if there's going to be a capital improvement, like that's going to go back to Bosco for approval before any big capital improvement happens. So we're, with all due respect, making a lot of noise around long-term hypothetical planning, but there isn't an action that we are objecting to other than that hypothetical planning, which is only materialized and implemented through capital improvements. So if there's information that we want staff to pursue, we need to be much more clear about it here than this action item. Or we need to deprioritize this because we don't believe that we can get that information, or that we don't believe that it's important this year.
So on a staff perspective, when we look at the deliverables going, maybe that SFPUC is looking at through BOSCA, maybe that information would be helpful to help you look at your priorities. I think one of the key ones that we're seeing is actually in the 2028 timeframe, when they're looking at the larger alternative water supplies, and they'll be making decisions on bringing other cities who are not permanent customers, and what that process looks like. So I would, others may not agree, but those are probably the higher priorities in the 2028 timeframe.
I think that that's exactly right. So what do we need to be doing as a utility to get ready for 2028?
So what I think, what I'm hearing is to bring back some of the items that will go before BOSCA, so that UAC can make some of these recommendations on our positions or potential positions, and maybe that bring up a timeline of what of those upcoming items are. And I'll look to
Lisa, who's here?
To Lisa, if I am incorrect on that assumption.
Staff representative.
Yeah, so the alternative water supplies are the 28 timeframe. But what I think
2028.
2028. So what I think what staff can do is we can bring back kind of what those actionable items on the next phases that SFP is required to provide to BOSCA, and we get that in front of UAC so you can see what ones you think you want to have discussions in and around.
Okay, but I mean, somewhat to like what end, right? Like, I appreciate that, and I think it's good for education. It's important for anticipating future rates, but I want to be a little bit more specific about the information that we're seeking so that we can do something with that information.
Yeah, so the structure of BOSCA, of the 26 agencies, as Councilmember Lowing mentioned, it's Vice Mayor Greer who's our representative. That is the mechanism where all the 26 agencies have those conversations with SFPUC. Staff attends those conversations. I was at the last BOSCA meeting to hear the report out and comments from the general public. So we are actively engaged, as the councilman mentioned, as staff. Though BOSCA does not, or SFP does not report or have any obligation.
I know.
To your point to UAC, that said, UAC is a body that provides
Is a member
advice.
of that body.
And then we're trying to be more clear in saying that, Vice Mayor Stone is our BOSCA Board of Directors, so.
Okay.
But hearing all the interest here, we're just trying to bring back, what are the upcoming items we might
I
be
know,
concerned?
and I'm trying to level set expectations on this committee about what we can do and what we can't do if we want to have 12 other things, or fewer, but realistically, we cannot spend 5 or 6 meetings talking about water every year, right? We just can't. So, because it's at the expense of other things. So I want to be very specific about what we want and what we need. There are big decisions coming in '28. Big decisions, guys.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
I don't think it's complicated. I don't think we'll resolve it here tonight. I think this would be one area to have, as our liaison suggested, an ad hoc committee of, there's a few people who are really interested in this topic, and let them work on the question you just raised.
Well, I would say, I do not want to decide on an ad hoc committee tonight for any of these things. I think that there are several things that might warrant one, but I don't want to commit to those right now. What I would say is that, and where I was going with this, is that there are big decisions coming in '28. And there's a degree of education that needs to happen in advance of us approving those decisions, right? So what are the educational pieces that are important for us to get in advance of '28 and to encourage good, strong staff and community engagement with those educational pieces? And I would say, the concept of recycled water is a really important one to get moving on. And I think that the need for but people need to understand why we need new supply and why we want to pay for a different kind of supply that's resilient in a new way. Right, how it fits into that portfolio, and have some early indicator of what that's going to mean for rates.
When you say recycled water, are you talking?
Let's just say generally, no, I'm talking,
purple pipe?
no, alternative water supplies.
Oh, well, I mean, we went down that road, we reached our conclusions.
We reached our conclusions locally. SFPUC can do whatever they want on alternative water supply development.
Right. And what I'm hearing from you is that UAC not prioritize, in other words, take a fairly passive, hands-off approach to the entire SFPUC politics. And,
How about if we say this? I'm concerned about us preparing ourselves for good decision-making in '28. And which is when a decision on any of this that would affect rates would actually happen. Because right now, frankly, nothing's getting built that would affect rates
what sort
of
of
any
decision
substance.
even stands before us in '28? Well, I mean,
I will not.
I don't even understand what category of decision you're talking about.
So what I would suggest, again, is let staff come back and talk and provide you the UAC of some of the upcoming deliverables and actions and activities that SFPU has to make in their decision-making process.
Okay, I think that is a reasonable action item.
If that's the action item to bring back in this, that's an action item we can bring back to that, and then that will help to Commissioner Tucker's, what is coming up. If that's the action one, we can.
I guess my point is this, like, I'm sorry, but number 13 doesn't say anything. So if we could be more specific about, we will review the upcoming action items on the BOSQA agenda and materials that prepare us for, I don't know, and review educational materials or I don't want to say educational, just materials that are material to forthcoming decisions. So it's not just what is coming up this year, but it's what do we need as a community to know as we prepare to engage with much bigger decisions that are likely to come in the future. I don't want the first part of it. It doesn't say anything. Sorry.
Well, two of the top 5 lists, me and Utsoff, do say something specific about water. Not mealy-mouthed, not, confusing. It's very direct what we think one ought to do with water, or on this work plan item. Bob Phillips also comments on water. We ought to clearly communicate city concerns, but,
Yes, but
it sounds like you don't want to make that a priority item, that one do anything about SFP.
It's
So
not
one thing
about
we know,
me.
not in 2028, but right now, is we're looking at 10% rate increases this year and next year, and as far as the eye can see. And I know SFPUC.
that's a combination of our distribution system
That's
and
right.
our,
That's right, but you started this by mentioning or referring to alt water investments, which SFPUC will make or they won't. But it's also straight up standard CapEx maintenance and deferred maintenance that, where their CIP program is ballooning and it just rolls downhill on us. And so we either are silent and take it, or we come up with some kind of policy approach, of course, starting through our council representative on BOSCA, but there are a number of other, ways that we might find leverage. We might also work with other BOSCA with other neighbor cities and districts. I don't want to get into it here, but it's not just alt water, it's standard CapEx. It affects us now, not just in 2028. Enough said.
did you want to revise this in any way?
Yeah, you can just copy paste some of the things that are already in place.
Okay, but in service to wrapping up this exercise, I would like to see that final thing on there. I suggested striking the earlier stuff because.
Something to the effect of provide advice to council on a policy stance.
Okay.
And strategy, tactics, approach, whatever, towards or vis-a-vis SFPUC and BOSCA. There's something in all those words.
And there we can provide advice to, sure,
so that
council.
we can, with an aim towards, better drought planning statistics, more collaboration, and, all the things we've talked about many times. It doesn't help to rattle them off here, but so that we don't have 10% rate increases for the rest of time.
Well, we have CIP and we have rates above, but I think that there's some valuable anticipation of what is coming down the pike so that we can, an education around that so that we can anticipate whether there's going to be large rate increases.
I like keeping both of them, but I would also say, just provide advice to council on a policy stance toward BOSCA and SFPUC without getting into the details of drought planning and all this other stuff.
That's fine. I like that brevity. But Megan, could I ask one last time, what are these things coming down the pike that are different from what we're facing right now? I don't see what happens in 2 years.
So there are decisions, again, I don't want to belabor this, but I think coming back with the specific items that are in San Francisco's
Their own.
agreement with the cities and how they're going to be providing or not providing waters to other cities in 2028. So again, I would just like to bring those back, those action items and activities for you to consider, and without going through the items here, given that you were still going through your priorities.
Yes, and it's not agendized. So, given that, everyone feels generally comfortable with number 13? Okay, are there any items that were not on?
No, I just, like Bob said, the 13 should just say, provide advice. Am I looking at the right thing? Yeah, 13, provide advice to council on policy stance.
How do you do that? What is it?
That's a whole other question, how we provide advice to council, but what do you mean? How do we do it?
Everything else is much more specific, right? I mean, at least this tells us what is the input that we are providing advice around. We are not all subject matter experts on this topic for this community. Staff is, BOSCA is, SFPUC is. We need to be very careful about where our technical expertise stops and starts.
It stops at 0.
Well, I think if we can review their materials for policy priorities or something, but this is not our job to design and operate their system.
No, it's our job to advise council on important utility issues.
Exactly.
And the water rate increases that we're getting
Absolutely.
wholesale are one of those. So if these words
Absolutely.
capture that, then I'm fine with these words.
Okay. Are there any items that we would like to add?
We need to add a grid mod one. I have mocked one up.
Okay.
Does anybody else have one they want to?
Yeah, I have 2 I would like to add.
Okay.
On grid mod?
Not on grid mod.
Okay, so
Well, related electric utility business strategy.
Okay, let me
which would
just
embrace
read the
that.
grid mod one, and then you can do your 2.
Okay.
Okay. I'll just speak it and then we can edit. So grid mod : review strategy for citywide grid upgrades, design standards and technologies, timing of investment and work, and customer impacts. Edit away.
There's got to be a comma.
Okay.
There's an Oxford comma for you.
Appreciate it. Any other additions
You mean separate items or to this?
to this? Someone's having a party outside.
Oh, I would say the demand impacts is important. The impact of demand on all this other stuff. Yes.
Okay. Maybe review citywide load projections and strategy for these upgrades. Right, because the load projections drive grid mod.
I don't know. I'm not sure that's true.
Oh, we've just changed we absolutely.
I mean, one of the things I said in my memo is that we hear this from council a lot, the reminder that much of the $450 million grid mod project has to be done anyway. I've never seen an analysis that gets anywhere close to delineating what has to be done anyway with what is presumably optional, better, premium, really modernized. So it'd be a helpful exercise, in my opinion, to understand what has to be done anyway.
I thought that was a pretty good review that we had earlier. We had
a wonderful
Terry's
review.
presentation really reviewed, like what's antiquated, what do we need to change, what are the still questions that are still outstanding.
And does it
why
describe
we
what
slowed down.
comes above? And, I know we went to when and where, but am I the only one who doesn't have a good understanding of what is baseline, or we have to do anyway, and what premium, what comes above that?
I thought it was pretty good, and I actually would love to continue to have more discussions to understand how the vision changed, but in the original presentation, I thought it was pretty well explained what we need to do.
I'll go back and look for that, and also be curious what the dollar amount is that we, what falls in which bucket. How much of the 375 to 450 is baseline?
Okay. This is not an agendized item,
Yep.
so I want to keep it
Fair
to what we are actually planning to work on, while recognizing that we recently had a presentation on this. Do you have any specific needs does the UAC, or does the electric utility have any specific needs of us vis-a-vis reviewing load projections and strategy for you, the language on this?
So I think there's a continued need to provide staff advice on the impact and pace of the CIP, the spending, and how that affects rates, right? So I think that's an overall project, and the staff will design that to minimize the impact of rates. But as we minimize that impact of rate, we're going to have to look at prioritizing projects, and so we will come back with staff, as staff will come back and actually provide that. So part of this, creating this goal, would actually kind of reinforce that need to continue to come back to the UEC and talk through what this plan for grid mod is and how it's evolving and how the costs are continuing to project and what they are as forecast as far as long-term, right?
Okay. And do you see this as sufficiently differentiated, or do you have a clear understanding of how that presentation would be different than the presentations related to the capital improvement plan for the electric power utility?
To me, I see this proposed addition as very, very similar to what would be brought back under the CIP review.
Okay. Hearing that as a UAC, is there value in placing this as a sub-bullet in our CIP?
I actually
Or
just.
do you want it separate?
Can I, one comment I have is that two important words to me in here are design standards. So kind of to Commissioner Tucker's point, what are we designing? What are going to be our standards? So we are kind of talking about upgrading everything from 4 to 12. Anything that's 4 kilovolts is underpowered, so we need to get those up to, I don't remember, we're taking them to 12. And then, like the transformers, how many houses will they serve? We still have some critical questions we need to answer, and I feel like those are design standards. We need to decide, like, what are we building to? And then where do we not have that? I thought your presentation was great in terms of describing where we need upgrades anyway. We have equipment that's 70 years old. It's at the end of its useful life. We need to replace those, or we are bringing up the voltage to be uniform across the city. So you presented to us things that needed to be done, but we still had some open comments, and I do think design standards for grid mod is a specific thing I would like to understand, and it's not just, you could describe it in the CIP process, but it's kind of a separate, like, it's driving the CIPs, and if we just see those CIP projects without understanding why they are, it's hard to advise on them.
Yeah, and I would agree with that the load profile design standards drive and justify which CIPs are recommended for funding. And so to me, that's integrated into that presentation of the CIP. Why is this project moving forward? Well, it's because of this load projection or because of this design standard that we're trying to meet. So we could include those in that discussion to do the deeper dive on the CIPs, why this project, not another one, or what's driving the need for this project. We could keep that as a standalone item if that's the intent.
And part of the standalone items and having those is so you can highlight what you're going to be looking at, right? And so that that the layperson can see that. Though I love using the word grid mod, it's still a jargon for us, so we probably should say electric grid modernization and put in parentheses that's grid mod, but.
I agree with that. I was going to suggest that change. Grid modernization.
Isn't that what it is? I think it should stand alone. It's bigger than everything else in electricity put together. It's bigger than all the gas CapEx put together. So it's just big enough to stand by itself.
Another bullet under electric and grid mod is a lot of our community speakers who've written letters and so forth for years and talked about the issue of things like panel sizing and whether we're overbuilding in certain neighborhoods just because the panels get bigger, and never mind what actual peak load at that particular residence. Again, I keep reminding myself that I'm talking residential when that's the minority, it's the small part of our usage. Commercial is another big topic, but just in residential, now that we have AMI, I'm very keen, I think several of us are, is to see, are there learnings from AMI that show us whether this panel upsizing problem, I'll call it, whether it's there. In other words, are we finding interesting or correlations and trends between panel upsizing and actual peak load? And then one has to wonder, did we plan grid mod build out to serve all these 600 amp panels that actually aren't using the load that you might think they do? I mean, those are things I'm sure you know, but I think we on UAC don't track that yet.
Okay. I think rather than, we need to stay focused, and I need to get out of here. So what I would like to do now is, I understand that there may be a couple of additional items that Commissioner Metz would like to add. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, could we do that quickly and wrap this in the next 5-10 minutes so that we can vote
Okay.
and prioritize?
The first one, which is written down, is electric utility business strategy. So I would just copy what was submitted, which was develop a flexible scenario-based business strategy that incorporates impacts on CPAU of increased and highly uncertain demand from data centers and other loads, both within CPAU territory and throughout CAISO. I think that's, the second part is something very important that has not been discussed much, because even if we were to do nothing with data centers, the impact of AI is going to cascade throughout the grid, and it's going to affect us whether we have any local loads or not. Energy demand is just skyrocketing in electricity in ways that hasn't happened in decades, probably since the early history of electrification. So it's a tremendous transformation that we need to be able to deal with. Okay, so I had some more details in there, but I think this would be fine for just a label.
What kind of questions does staff have in terms of the business strategy pertaining to our electric utility?
So I think there is some, if you look at our RRP, looking some changes, we look at a high, low, and medium forecast. And we are communicating with our customers or setting up these policies and procedures, try to keep them very narrow. I think this one, while interesting, I don't think it's like a priority for us right now as a utility to be more straightforward on that. And then throughout the CAISO is, it's a balancing authority throughout the state of Northern California. For us to take on that type of analysis is really kind of far-reaching in terms of what that would look like. So as a staff, trying to prioritize on making sure that when we bring in load, we're protecting our customers, we're making updates to our IRP, we're doing these highly structured and close ones, really are key areas. I think on a business strategy plan, I'm struggling with that a little bit in terms of how we would we would put that together in the timeline of this
I
year.
think we don't need to be mapping out what's going on throughout CAISO in detail, but we do need to have a sense of what's going to happen to the demand for energy and capital equipment and so on as a result of decisions made, throughout the world, and especially in CAISO. I think they're going to affect availability of energy for us. They're going to affect what we talked about before, our PPAs that we try to establish. Particularly, it's going to affect gas, as we're seeing throughout the country already. So, I'm not saying this is easy, but I mean, the utility teed up a demand forecast with a window of 100%, 10 years out. And so we're talking about spending real money on capital and making big decisions about PPAs and so on. So I'm suggesting a planning process that can get us closer to making good decisions on those big expenditures.
I think you captured that in item 14, though, and looking at the load projections and how that ties to grid modernization. The CAISO process, working with the CEC, working with CAISO, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts in there. So I'm, looking at the grid modernization is really, I think, that area of focus for us. And I'll look to Terry.
I think
I don't see that as the near-term priority. I think looking at the grid modernization and how that impact rates and affordability is really kind of that focus. I think that is that near-term business strategy. I wouldn't even say it's our midterm business strategy. A lot of the agencies have not done an extensive grid modernization. There are very few throughout the state.
Phil, it sounds to me like what you're saying is like anybody who reads the newspaper knows that power, energy around the world is is exploding in demand. So it sounds like your fears or your concerns here are, will that affect cost, like what the cost of a transformer or the lead time or just our ability to get infrastructure stuff? And your other concern probably is, does this mean our power costs, like the next trolley deal, is going to be much more expensive? And maybe what you're saying is, Council expects the UAC to have a position on, given these huge macro things that are going to shake the world, our world in electric. What's our position? Are we discussing this actively with staff? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this is all the above. And item 14 is a capital plan, which of course is extremely important in a business that's very heavily capital intensive. But we're throwing in a ringer which never existed before, which is that demand is changing dramatically in unpredictable ways. And that affects every ingredient of the business. It affects our revenue, it affects our costs, both on the energy side and on the capital side. And we need to have at least a framework for thinking about that.
So maybe instead of saying, we want a business strategy for electric, which makes it sound like we don't have one, and we do, maybe it's more like, given these major shifts and the question on everyone's mind, like what's happening in the electric space, both in buying the power and buying the stuff, is UAC and staff, are we collaborating to have advice to council? Maybe item 16 or whatever says something like that, separate from grid mod. I don't know.
Guys, I have to get us down to 6 items, okay?
Well, then get rid of all the ones that are baseline, like reviewing the rates and the CapEx. Seriously.
But we don't need to get rid of 6, we're just going to prioritize 6,
We
right?
need to prioritize 6, and I just want to be realistic. We're not going to get to 15
You asked for additions,
to
and
20.
you got an addition from a member, so.
I want the additions, but I just want to be clear on if there's any tweaks we can make to the existing ones that would capture elements of this, because we have many on the electric utility already, and
On my point about affordability of electricity, you could build in something that acknowledges the current environment, because I do think it is on everyone's mind, is that electricity is going to become more more expensive. Market rates are probably going to become more expensive if we become more exposed to market rates because we can't get power purchase agreements, et cetera. So if we focus on long-term affordability, 5-year affordability, put those words in the affordability category.
I would strongly support if the focus is on the impact on affordability, right? The business strategy is it solvency or is it affordability? I mean, those are the two things about a business strategy, right?
I mean, you can shoehorn any item into another item, and then we have these omnibus priorities, and then we have a work plan like last year's that really had no impact. So,
Well, we did do some work last year.
yeah, look at those accomplishments. We replaced the sewer main lines.
If I,
Hands are still
just
dirty.
going back to the chair's question, like how many of these priorities are related to electric is it's 1, 4, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And maybe I missed one, but I think.
14 and 15.
14 and, no, yes, 14 and 15. So there's
One is gas.
I think, and the new 15. So I think,
1, 4, 7, what?
yeah.
8,
4 is reserves, 1 is gas. I
9,
must have the wrong
Baker
list.
10,
Chili's reserves,
14,
right.
15. We have 8 of our 15 so far.
What? I'm sorry, item 1 is about gas transition, so is that about electric? Yeah, indirectly. 8 is about time of use. 4 is about reserves. I don't know what that has to do with electric, other than,
So, I mean, there's electric, I mean, I can
Yeah, we're
take out the one
electric.
specifically, but, I mean, we do have a fair amount of electric activities associated in this first year. And may I suggest that from these activities this year, that might help inform maybe something of a larger strategy later on? Again, this is your work plan.
I want to finish our addition, but I'm really going to cap this at 3 minutes for any subsequent items, okay? So if we could start the clock, I would be very grateful, because we've got to get out of here before 11.
Are you asking for
If there are-
prioritization at
no,
this point?
No, I do need to, I don't want to shut anyone down, and I think that are there any other additions that we need to make? And apparently I need to ask for seconds on these. If we're adding whole new ones, which I didn't realize.
Presumably, we need seconds on all of
We
them.
are, I think that's true.
we need a second on every one of the 14, 15.
No, I think we need on the new ones.
Why?
they weren't.
So
Why do the old
ultimately-
I'm sorry, why do the old ones that staff wrote not need a vote? And
Might I interject, please?
sure.
Ultimately, this should be a reflection of a majority of the UAC's recommendation. So typically, if what we're doing is essentially making, in a formal sense, but rather an informal sense, amendments to the motion, you would technically have a second. So you're operating in a rather informal manner, which is fine. But if you're trying to figure out Robert's Rules of Order and how you can navigate whether or not a recommended change is supported or not, you typically do it through
A vote.
a vote.
Okay.
And I make a suggestion, a second, and then if it gets a second, then you have the discussion. If it doesn't receive a second, and those typical processes. So,
Okay.
just something
Can't
for
we
you to
vote on the whole
consider.
thing once? The whole,
Correct. But I also think the chair is also trying to figure out how to manage the meeting. And if you create a long list, then you're just creating another agenda to talk about, do we include it, yes or no? And so I think, given the time, trying to figure out how to be efficient.
Do you need this wrapped tonight?
Yes. Okay. So final, I'm going to skip the seconds on this. You can add 2 more items, but let's do it efficiently.
No, that's it.
That's it.
what I
Perfect.
wanted to-
Okay. So now we have 15
sorry,
items.
Sorry, Megan.
Yeah.
I did not add an item, but at least 2 of us have put operational efficiencies, so the way UAC operates, on our top 5 list. I don't know if that doesn't feel like something that belongs on a work plan item. It's very important, and the whole work plan, in my opinion, doesn't even work if we don't make some changes to how, to our operational efficiency, someone called it. Anyway, I don't want to talk about it now, I'm sure no one else does, but
I agree with you. That's why I didn't raise it now, because I agree with you how important it is, but I felt it didn't fit in this list.
okay, it's not going away as an item that we talk about in months ahead.
No.
Okay. So we have 15 items. Our goal now is to prioritize them. What? We don't have to. Okay.
So this is a work plan. These are not your priorities. So the work plan is, I mean, it's only your priorities, let me be clear. This is a work plan. It is everything from what you're required to do per the Muni Code, what your job is, what council has asked you to look at,
Okay.
and what you as a UAC are recommending as priorities to be looked at.
Okay.
So I think in general,
We
this
can
is the
just,
list.
we can roll with this.
You can roll with the list, and then as soon as
Great.
council comes back and makes some adjustments, changes, adopts it, then you can help with that priority. So you can move that to the later date.
And work with staff on calendaring it across the next 12 months.
Wonderful.
Do we want to put it in order to show what's important to, I mean, somewhat in order? Not, like,
think
I
it
would
would-
move grid mod up, move some other stuff down, just kind of make it sound like these are the things we care about, or at the top.
We could ask staff to organize these.
Could,
No? Sorry.
You could do
well,
like A's, you could do like A's or B's, so you don't have to prioritize the whole thing. This is an A level, this is B level.
No, it's not about priorities. I just meant in terms of organizing the electrical items.
I was going to make that suggestion. To cluster the electrical items, I think would be helpful, so that it is clear.
That's fine. I've said it, I think I'm not the only one. I think if I were council looking at this list of 15 or 17, whatever the number is, it would be too many. I'd say, boy, what a hodgepodge of items. It's good to cluster them. I would also create a cluster, or you call it baseline or whatever you want, but the things we just do, it goes without saying, and I've referred several times to rate review, CapEx review, customer survey review, things we do all the time. Of course, they're important. Put those in one list and then put
So we have
the other ones-
standing,
Standing, yeah.
Sure. I think what I'm hearing is just a desire for some version of categorization, which there's some that are ongoing. I would say some that are, perhaps we use the term key priority. So grid mod is one I think would be a key priority per this discussion. And some that are maybe CIP or financially related. We can try and bucket them.
We can try to bucket them, and if they're hitting all utilities, we put those, and the electric ones, maybe the highlight the grid mod. So and then to Commissioner Tucker's point, the ones that are de facto ones we have to do. So I think you've given enough information to staff, and there are 15, so it's, perfect is the enemy of the good.
wonderful. And I would encourage, for the record, I would encourage council to strike anything that they don't want our advice on, because I think that would actually be very helpful it gets a two-way street, right? We are going to be most useful if we advise on the things that you want our advice on. I don't know if we can ask that, but
No, they sometimes come back with edits. They don't get rubber stamped.
great. I would love for council level, A and B on these. Like,
I thought you were going to tell us to cut 6 of them so
I
you
would
wouldn't have to.
I would love for you to cut half of them.
We'll do what we can.
Okay, wonderful. My other request, and I'm just being snarky, but I think we received our work plan approval like a couple months ago for last year. What is sorry. But like, if we are going to use this as a template, is there a sense of when this is agendized for discussion?
Our intent is to bring it as soon as August 10th, I think, is the first, Oh, they're bundled.
Correct. So commission work plans are typically bundled. So UAC's bundle will typically go in the September, October timeframe. And so I think we do need to work with the mayor on whether or not it's a consent item or an action item. But
Okay,
I don't have those details at this
that's
point.
fine. But I will just say, it's nice to know that it's coming sooner rather than later. Okay, so on
Minutes
this,
Capture your statement, snarkily, snidely, positive that.
so in order to actually make this happen, we need to vote on this because this is an action item that was supposed to last an hour. So do I have,
Can we
this
look
is
at
the
what's on the
motion.
screen? I think 10 is not an electric item. 10 is the SCAP.
It's partly.
Commissioners, might we suggest item 1 be revised to identify or group
Yes,
work plan
items,
objectives
objectives.
by utility, as well as categories such as key priorities or ongoing.
Sounds
And then
great.
we'll do that independently.
That sounds great. Okay, so do I have a motion to recommend that the city council approve our work plan?
I'll move to do that once they
Thank you.
finish typing.
Thank you. Okay, and do I have a second? I don't know.
I'll second.
Wonderful. Just trying to be a neutral arbiter around here. Great. Could we please call the roll on this? Call the votes? Call the votes.
Just wanted to state for the record that we had no public comment requests for item 3. Commissioner Croft?
No, I can't believe it.
Or would we like to open public comment now?
Sure, we will open public comment.
Is there a comment?
If any member of the public would like to speak on item 3, please raise your hand or press star 9 now. We have no request to speak.
Beaten them into submission.
Okay, now could you please call the votes?
Yes. Commissioner Croft?
Yes.
Commissioner Metz?
Yes.
Vice Chair Phillips?
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker?
Yes.
Chair Mater?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Do we have any commissioner comments or reports from meetings and events?
Oh, I have one. Water Smart. I woke up 10 days ago or so to a text message that said my house was leaking and it was to the tune of 300 or 400 gallons a day, and I was able to jump on it, and I looked at my meter 5 times to Sunday and saved a leak, and I thought that was great. Also, I got a letter, I'm sure maybe all of you EV owners did. Apparently, our utility looks at DMV data and writes to me to say that they know I have an EV. Mine is basically a glorified golf cart made by Fiat, but I guess it still counts. And so it's kind of interesting to get this letter. Did you all get one? Okay, everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Electric bikes don't count, apparently.
What's that?
They don't know I have an electric bicycle.
Oh, yeah. They should.
Okay. We'll now turn to virtual public comment.
If any member of the public would like to speak on an item not on the agenda, please raise your hand or press star 9 now. We have no hands raised.
Fabulous. Thank you, everybody. I feel positive about the year ahead and appreciate your stamina this evening. With that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
One moment.
Please.
On the 12-month rolling calendar, in July, we had agreed at the last meeting to address the reserve policy. In fact, we had a discussion about whether to do it in July or September and agreed to do it in July, but I don't see it on the calendar.
Commissioner Phillips, can we address the July issue at the moment, or no?
It's not supposed to be for discussion, but I've heard the comment, if that helps.
Great.
And we'll take a look at the calendar.
Okay. Because the 12-month rolling calendar was not agendized today, we cannot have a discussion about it. But there are several issues with July, and please do pay attention to your emails, because there will be some coordination emails going out in the next couple of hours. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.